All right, hello and welcome to episode 20 of the CrackDown. Today we have Peter Dunn, head coach of Mad Lions League of Legends, the overall thing, not specifically just the LEC team. I'm going to make the distinction because everyone seems to get confused every time I mention you. Obviously head coach of the current organization, Mad Lions. He also was the coach of Splice. Previously, he was coach of the Split in 2018 spring, I believe. Also coached in Brazil in 2017. So I guess that was like the first time that people really heard of you and you started getting your props as a coach. And obviously we have Thorin here as well, always on the show, co-host here. I think that's probably the first point I want to jump into, Peter, is like, what exactly is your job as the head coach of Mad Lions overall and not like specifically just the LEC team?
So, hi Dom, hi Thorin. Thanks for having me on. I think the easiest way to think of it is think of it like traditionally sort of a Korean League of Legends organization, right? So historically in Korea, you had the strategic coach, and the strategic coach is the person who would lead the scrims, he would lead practice. Although Koma moved to head coach.
No, that was his original role when he won the World Championships.
Exactly. So you would have Koma in that role, or Stake, for instance, of Flash roles, and then you would have the head coach is somebody who is technically that person's boss, but is in charge of things outside of the game, but also does a little bit more coaching. So I know in NA, for instance, you have a GM role, which fulfills this role of scouting, team building, culture building, and that kind of thing. And that's normally a GM's role, whereas in Korea and China, that's typically been the head coach's role, and the strategic coach is the person who's responsible for everything inside game. So I wear two hats. One hat is as Mac's sort of strategic or assistant coach for the LEC team, but also I lead a lot of the scouting, team building, and long-term strategy for Mad Lions as an org and Splice before.
Mm-hmm. Does that mean that you don't do like any strategical coaching within your team? Because I mean, obviously you have the background as somebody who understands the game on a high level strategically. Like, are there any points where you jump in with the team, or like they ask for like a second opinion on strategy within the game, or are you specifically just working on things like team building, etc.?
No, I do a lot of the strategic work as well. I pretty much work with the LEC team every single day. I think the easiest way to describe it is Mad Lions have a 3-coach coaching system. Okay, so it's easier if we call them coach 1, coach ABC. Okay, and coach A is the person who's leading the scrims, maybe what people would foresee as the main sort of strategic coach. And we have Mac. Coach B and coach C. That's Mac, exactly. And Coach B and Coach C are people who either do one-to-one feedback, or sometimes they'll focus on one part of the review, or they'll focus on one player. But at Mad Lions, we've always had this three coaching staff system. Before this year, it was Duke, Mac, and I, and all of us fulfill each of the different roles on different days. So when I was head coaching back in 2018, or strategic coaching, but leading the LEC team, I would say that I led maybe 75% of the reviews. When Duke was coaching, I would say Duke led maybe 90% of the reviews, and I'd say Mac leads about 85%. And we're trying to bring Cass up. Cass sort of is who's our third coach, is beginning to fulfill some of the other roles as well.
Just because you've invoked that now cursed name, because that used to be a pro player, if people don't know, he was someone who, I forget what team it was he was brought into. Wasn't it like Elements or something, some really shit team in LEC years and years back? Because I remember someone I saw posted a clip that was like one of my highlights, where I'm in a video and I'm raving about that. I'm like, oh, and they've signed someone called Je Suis Cass. Spoiler, he's dog shit. And then he actually, guess what? He was dog shit. So what team did he play for? Do you remember?
It may have been Elements. He's definitely played in the LEC before.
He's a support player, correct?
Yeah, so support player.
I think I remember the player.
Had a very had a lengthy and interesting career at the regional level, but did play LEC for, I think.
You got my attention for a moment anyway, so moving on from that. Here's the thing, though, there's a lot we could get into here, Dom, because basically, if you've seen any of the podcasts that have been around LEC for the last 2 years, it's basically the franchising era. Most discussion has been around like the conclusion that most teams have come to, which is unlike NA, which is still recycling Keith McBride and all these fucking people that are just stuck in some hellscape purgatory of go to Challenger, play in the academy team, come back up, be in the team, be in the bottom of LCS, like just doing that cycle over and over again. Unlike that, in Europe, the actual conclusion most people have come to, and Peter's at the forefront of this, is don't recycle old veterans because they're never going to be the best. So instead, even if the guy that you bring in from the European National League level fails, there's so many other guys, just go get another one. So essentially, National League level is a lottery system where you're trying to pick out the next perks. Instead of getting basically, here's the equivalent, right? Obviously, someone like Nuke Duck is still good if they can still be a top player. But the difference is, my boy Freeze, who, listen, on the most basic metrics, probably deserves to get the last ADC spot. No one's going to get him because he's not going to be the best ADC. So instead, they'd rather gamble that a kha'zix or a Comp or one of these guys becomes the next Reckless. So Peter himself has been quite at the forefront of this whole approach.
I've got a question here. So what happened with this whole system that you just described? How did Woolite potentially get a starting spot last year in summer with this being the system?
That's a very interesting question, and I'm sure somebody at Rogue will be able to answer that for you. But actually, I mean, just talking about the system as well, though, when we talk about sort of recycling talent, I mean, there's an interesting question as well for what EU brings in terms of bringing up new coaching talent. Because I think that everyone knows about ERLs, and they hear about kha'zix being the next, or kha'zix or kha'zix being the next sort of superstar player coming up from the ERLs.
People said Comp would be
I think Comp is really Comp and Labrov. This split is going to be a really, really interesting bot lane. They're two mechanically insane players.
Cool.
They were definitely kha'zix and Comp and Labrov and kha'zix were definitely the pure mechanics, the top two players. But you have a lot of players in these ERLs because there's 12 different European regional leagues, and some of them are qualifying leagues from other countries. So you used to have the Nordic League, which had the Norwegian champions, Finnish champions, Swedish champions. And in all of this, you have a lot of coaches as well who are earning their stripes, who are earning experience and that kind of thing. So I think it works on both it's a good system for bringing up young playing talent, but also young coaching talent, which is very hard to find elsewhere in the rest of the world. And I think this is a big benefit that EU has over other regions right now. So I just mentioned that.
I mean, I just wonder if this would possibly work in NA, because it seems like we really just have we're starved for talent, and even the top of our ladder. I recently have been taking a couple weeks off where I've just been playing challenger games all day, and we just don't have enough players. It feels like you just get the same players over and over again. And people it's so much different, because I remember when I went to Europe last year and I did my unranked to challenger there, you would get in low grandmaster games and 7 out of the 10 players would be pro players from regional leagues. At least 7 out of the 10 are just people that play League of Legends professionally as their job. Whereas in NA, maybe you get 1, maybe you get 2. It's nowhere close to the amount of people that are just paid to play the game all day and are trying to be the best. So it just it feels like, because of the way that NA League of Legends just is based off just the people that play it, the NA players themselves, it's really hard to cultivate all this talent, because we just don't have as many players. We don't have the field to pick from.
Just can I ask you a question, Dom?
Sure.
Just you mentioned that there's 7 pro players in each of your games. What was your experience of toxicity? Because did this increase the toxicity, or did this reduce the toxicity?
So when I was in Europe, I thought the toxicity was much more manageable than in NA, because NA, it's this whole thing of oh, I don't want to get banned, I might soft hit you, what's happening, oh shit, I trolled one death, but now it looks like I'm trying. Well, it's just so weird, right? Because I love the European bluntness, where if somebody is hey, I got in your game and I fucking hate you, they will lock Nunu and they will run it down on you. And I had that done by pro players. I don't know if you guys remember the player NIQ. He played for
used to play on Gambit, yeah.
Yeah, used to play on Gambit way back when that was the Russian roster or whatever. I think I believe he's not Russian, but he played on that team, or maybe he's Polish, I believe. But he just disco nunu'd me. no fucks given, played Nunu AD carry, Ghost Cleanse, he just sent it on me. And as a player, like, I can respect that a lot more, because if I see that, I can just dodge the game if I don't want to play,
Yes.
And obviously, like, I had like a little ego war there myself, and I was like, hey, like, if I let him disco Nunu me, then I could post it on Twitter and like shit like that. So, it's really just like some psychopath shit you get into. But like, it's so much more manageable as a player, because if you get trolled, like, and you're getting trolled from the beginning, you can kind of like mentally and like emotionally detach from the game and just let it happen. Whereas in NA, it's kind of just like this thing where you don't really know if you're going to win or lose. It's like, oh, this guy trolled last game, but it looks like he's kind of trying this game, and then he dies twice, and then he's trolling, and it's just like, it's just so much more uncomfortable, because there's no, like, you don't have an idea of a player as like what you're getting into when you're playing.
I mean, Mad Lions did a preseason boot camp in NA, and my experience with the solo queue in NA is, in EU, I guess, people are more sort of aggressive, whereas in NA, maybe it's a bit more passive-aggressive, just from what I saw looking over my players' shoulders. But The interesting thing is that if you have 7 out of 10 players in each of your pro games, like, people know who you are, right? They're going to hold you accountable. If you're toxic to them, maybe you're toxic to some guy's friend today, and next week, one of their friends is going to run it down for you, right? So it's like a sort of mutually assured destruction scenario, a little bit in EU solo queue, which maybe balances things, which makes it more, the game's more interesting.
So that's what the Mad in Mad Lions stands for.
Well, I've definitely seen some interesting terminology used by in watching my players in solo queue.
Thing is, though, to go back to that topic, though, like, obviously in the past, people have tried this, right? This approach of bringing in the rookies and the ERL players. But the difference is they did it in the past where it's like they really had nothing left to gamble. Like, the teams I never understood were the ones who were at the bottom of LEC, who were hanging on to the old washed up veterans. So at that point in time, with the economics of the industry, you're just spending a lot of money and getting nothing for it. You come in 8th in LEC or 10th in LEC. Yep. So, for example, even though people give mad props to Rogue for the way they handled it, like, they also kind of backdoored it. Like, first of all, they had one of the best ERL teams, and then they had a very bad LEC team, and then they just were smart enough, unlike some other teams, to go, why don't I just swap some of these players around and have a playoff LEC team and just say, forget the ERL team. The difference in your team, Peter, is you took some players, basically one at this point in time, from the ERL team, but you gambled on basically an entire team. I mean, Humanoid himself's only a year removed from being a rookie. An entire team, and you did it with championship aspirations. Like, they were in position in this tournament to potentially win the split already. So you've actually gambled for not just to become decent, but potentially to win it all.
So one thing which I learned from coaching Splice for 2 years is nobody remembers the team that comes 3rd to 6th in the league. If you're the champions, sure, people remember you. If you're the team that comes runner-up, sure, people remember. Even if you come 10th, Origin had that season where they went 117 or something, and people still bring that up today, right? The work motivation,
improvement
team or whatever.
Improvement team, there we go. Yep. But they don't remember you if you come 3rd to 6th. And we had a long sit down at the end of last season saying, is this something we want to do? And the answer is no, right? So we went and spoke to a lot of our existing players. Obviously, Chachi retired. Obviously, Nosuke moved on to Excel. But we spoke to some of the people, and I talked to those people and those individuals, and I said, look, this is the project we want. We want to go and try to compete for the championship in the long run. Are you on board? Is this something which you can see this team doing? And when I spoke to Humanoid was just like, I mean, of course. Like, I mean, if you have me on your team, you're going to be a top 3 team. Like, surround me with the players, and we can compete for championships. And that's not the answer that everybody gave. And I mean, that's why we ended up picking some of the players that we had. We looked for a lot of players that had really high upside when we were picking people up from the Academy League. I think Mac has gone on record and said that our measuring stick was G2. Okay, and so when we looked at a player, we looked at one of them. We said, okay, the top laners, we're not willing to pick somebody who has a low ceiling. We're willing to go for somebody who has potentially a high ceiling, even if they have a very low floor. Can this player one day be better than Perks at AD carry? Can this player one day be better than Mickey? Can this player one day be better than Wonder? And that meant that basically our list, we were following sort of 10 top laners, 10 mid laners, 10 AD carries, and at the end of the day, there were only 1 or 2 people in each position that we were even considering talking to. Like we only talked. Kazi was the only AD carry we talked to once Kobe had made it clear that he wanted to move on and explore his options in the offseason. We didn't even consider talking to anyone else. It was like, it's Kazi or it's nobody, and that was kind of the approach we took last offseason. So.
Mm-hmm. How confident were you when the team was put together? Like, was this pretty much the dream scenario, getting third?
Obviously, with any rookie team, you kind of aim for improvement in summer. But if you ask me before the season, how confident was I in all of these players? These are all players who we've tracked for the last 1 year, 2 years, right? Like Kazi is one of the first players that I ever knew when I came into Europe, because I was scouting kha'zix for our 2018 team, and I watched him like smash kha'zix, and I can't remember who kha'zix was playing in lane 2v2. And I remember thinking, this guy, is this like Forgiven Smurf or somebody? Because I watched Forgiven play at international level. And I honestly just thought it was his Smurf. And this was Kazi when he was 14 or 15 at the time. Just playing high elo solo queue. So how confident was I in the players? So we were pretty confident in all of our players. Like I said, the only person who kind of played their way into our considerations in 2019 in the 2019 off season was kha'zix. Everyone else was somebody we've been following for a long time. And in fact, when I look at this EU Masters, the people that I'm looking at from this EU Masters are not the stars like Tinks and Sigenda. They're other, like the young ones who are coming up, the 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. Don't want to give any names away, there were 7 or 8 players who were really very interesting at this EU Masters. Not for LEC in 1 year, but maybe in 3 years and maybe in 4 years. So.
Thing is, though, when you say that, like that is still a distinction to be made in the league. There's a couple of teams trying this approach, and by the way, I think actually thus far getting good success out of it, because at the moment it's Mad Lions, Rogue, and Misfits. Look where these teams are; they're all on the brink of actually joining the Fanatics and G2s of the world with new players. Well, meanwhile,
we won't talk about Vitality. We'll leave Vitality out of it.
You know what? As much as people like to meme on Vitality, they did not have their star mid laner in Europe, for fuck's sake.
Yep.
You cannot just field like Selfie, who's literally, as I pointed out in this last episode of Each Night, like 7 years removed from his rising up phase. Like, that's over. But my point, actually, that ties into it, is we still live in a world where there's people out there will waste their own motherfucking time putting Mickey and Abidage in the mid lane. Meanwhile, if we were to go with your logic there, Peter, I'd rather gamble on Naji Felix. You know what? He has lots of flaws, but one day he could be actually an elite player. Right now he isn't, but someone's going to have to give him the try eventually, and whoever gambles, if they win that gamble, might have one of the best mid laners in Europe. Mickey and Abidage are not going to ever be one of the best mid laners in Europe. That's just an unreasonable expectation.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because Abidage, we were looking at all of the options when we were planning to sign Humanoid, because Humanoid came in sort of a class of like 4 top mid laners: Nemesis, Humanoid, Larson, and Abidage. And we spoke to Abidage. Like we rated Abidage in terms of mechanics over Nemesis. I'm not saying that Abidage is necessarily better than Nemesis, but his mechanics were top class. And we used to scrim his team in Turkey, and Niski basically learned his Zoe from getting smashed in scrims by Abidage. And then we were like, between like Niski and I and Mac and I, we basically studied everything Abidage was doing. And then Niski is a kind of guy who will study people over and over again. He'll spend 10 hours, 20 hours, just like studying every single thing he can about a player. And then he learned to play Zoe from watching that. So Abidage was really high on our list. But I remember we interviewed him for the role, and he said 2 words. Like I was trying to sell him the Splice project, and I asked him if he had any questions, and I was speaking to him for 40 minutes, and the only thing he said was his name, and yes once and no once. And that was it. And I think that was the point where we didn't consider him afterwards. But he was like definitely a standout mechanical player for sure.
Yeah, I'm not super low on Abidage. I think Mickey I'm pretty low on. I mean, there's players that I have no idea how they end up in the LCS in the LEC over and over again. The one that everyone's talking about right now is Jack Troll potentially getting signed to Schalke, where it's like this guy, like I just don't know how this guy has a job over people like, for example, Steelback, right? Like Steelback when he showed up in Vitality, I thought he was playing decently. Like, it wasn't like he's fake or anything, but at least it looked like the team had some life. So to see like these teams go back to like Jack Troll really just It reminds me of NA because we have this all the time. I mean, Thorin mentioned it originally, but like the biggest example, as soon as Thorin was talking about players being recycled over and over again, and the constant cycle of going into LCS, okay, back to an academy team, rising back up. It's like the Golden Glue DeMonte thing that we have right now. Like that's the most famous one where Golden Glue was a pro, went to Cloud9 Academy for 2 years, gets back on Golden Guardians for one split, then which was already weird because DeMonte looked like semi-promising, at least he qualified for Worlds, etc. And then you see DeMonte go to Academy, and now he's back in Golden Guardians, and it's just like this constant cycle of like people being at the bottom. It reminds me of the Jack Troll thing. I just don't understand how this guy is getting, like, I know he's high rated in solo queue. I follow all that stuff. I just don't see what advantage he has over some of the supports that we've seen.
But it's also hard when people get recycled through Academy, it's also worth asking, what is the Academy system for in NA, right? Like, if you're a coach and you want to improve as a coach, and you're in Europe, you have the choice to try to earn your experience through an LEC Academy team. But you can also, if you want to like show that you're capable of leading a team to victory, you can go to LDLC, you can go to Big, you can go to Giants, you can go to all of these massive orgs and just play to win, play to win with new young talent and show that you can do it. And honestly, the NA Academy system is nobody cares, and nobody cares if you win. As well, which makes it hard as a coach to prove yourself and to improve, right? Well, so they're kind of being recycled without ever getting any better, if that makes sense.
The thing is, no one actually pays attention to our academy. Like even EU Masters, I didn't watch the finals of NA Academy, right? But I watched EU Masters. I watched like the end of that tournament. And when you look at NA Academy, like no one really remembers. Like even if the teams make playoffs, nobody knows who's playing well, who's playing poorly. Like and the reason for it is because we have so many like former LCS players that are playing in these academy matches that it's just not interesting, right? Like when you're watching the end of I mean, obviously, at the end of EU Masters, you have Yellow Star. Like that's the one player that is like, I guess, has a really storied career. But in NA, we had something like 5 of the players that were in the finals had all played LCS previously. Like we had players like Anda, Defly, Matt. I think the top laner was Brandini. He's played LCS before too. It's like 4 out of the 5 players on one team have been in LCS before. It's like, who cares? Like, who's going to watch that? And the players that should be our rookie players, like for example, Revenge and FlyQuest, who I talked to recently, no one knows if he actually played well. I have no clue how he played in the split because it just doesn't matter over here.
But I think also it's interesting because I watched your co-stream of the finals of EU Masters and you didn't sound that impressed.
Yeah,
but
I was not that impressed.
But
I mean, it was a pretty shit final, let's be real.
It was a pretty bad final, but it's worth saying that this is, just to use a basketball analogy, this is the 2004 draft, right? Last year was the 2003 draft. That was the year with Carmelo Anthony,
and
LeBron James.
Dwayne
Wade. Yeah, Dwayne Wade, all of these insane players, right? Who were coming up, who had kind of proved themselves over the past couple of years.
It's a one-off class, you mean? Yeah,
it's a one-off class, but maybe the 2005 class can really impress. But this is kind of lots of people filling in the gaps that those people have left behind.
Right.
So maybe the quality wasn't as high as it has otherwise been. But I would just recommend sticking with it in the future because a lot of these guys, like I think VTO, who was the LDLC mid laner, he's 16, I think. Playing his first ever.
Yeah, he's the Zoe guy, right?
Yeah, he's the Zoe guy, right? Sorry. But he is. But that's an example of a player. Maybe he doesn't get his chance. If 2 years ago, Humanoid Nemesis and Abadage, they're still playing in the regional leagues. So I just mentioned that for context.
I've got a question for you, Peter. What do you think about this though? Because the one big downside, in my opinion, of this approach of treating ERL players like they're a lottery ticket, and you get the guy. Forget lottery ticket because that implies like you wait and then you either win or you don't. These are more like short. It's more like a scratch ticket. It's like I didn't win this one. The problem is when they throw them away after a short time. So I think, for example, names that immediately come to mind would be like Neon. He got a couple of games for SK, and now he's thrown away as trash. Even though, as far as I can tell, every time he goes down to ERL level, he's banging again.
There was a toxicity. There was a toxicity thing with him. I just wanted to interject and like say, I think so. There was like a competitive ruling against him apparently, and he got like kicked off his team because of that. So I think that might have had something to do with Neon. But yeah, you continue with your point. I just had one.
There's plenty of other examples you can give though. But basically, the point is, I worry about the idea that people think that unless this guy hits the ground running instantly in his LEC quality, then they're off the lottery league. Like no one wants to take the chance. What do you think of that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree completely with you, Thorin, and I think that this is one of the things that we're seeing because there's so much young talent, and people aren't really sure what to do with this talent. Like they're not really fitting it together in necessarily the right way or giving people time to develop. You mentioned Neon as an example. Leader is another example of somebody who got to play less than a split. I think Mystiques is another example.
There we go. Jeskla maybe.
Yeah, Jeskla. These are all very talented people. And, if you're going to go out to go and sign one of these players and you've done your research and you've done your scouting and you've decided that this is a guy you want, like you have to give them more than a split. I mean, if one of so we had a good season. It's very easy for me to say this now that we've just had a really good season and, we finished third, right? Mm-hmm. If Mad Lions, had finished sixth or heaven forbid out of playoffs, like we've spent 2 years following these guys. We're not going to go and dump them after 3 months of play. I mean, you have to trust the process and you have to trust that the thing that you've seen in these players is valid. And yeah, but as Thorin says, that's one of my concerns because there's so much young talent. You can always just move on to the next thing without necessarily seeing how this player can develop. I mean, a lot of there are many examples of pro players who never really reached their peak until they've been playing for many years, sometimes even swapping roles. I mean, Score was a pretty good AD carry, but he never became that. He wasn't that star player originally. He was just like a very solid a player who
what about like Afro? There's one. Used to just be a bog standard AD carry, became one of the best support players.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Insec was like a top laner for a little bit, became a godlike jungler. kind of.
Not Insec.
He can play Zac. So,
what? Yeah. Insec is your trigger or what?
I've seen Insec play Zed on stage. I've seen him play Shaco on stage. I've seen him play many things on stage with varying degrees of success. But he was always a very interesting player and always a very confident player, and you could always say that about Insec.
I mean, he's a player that at least he role swapped from top to jungle, and when he became a jungler, he made it to the finals of Worlds, so he couldn't have been that bad, at least.
Sure. I mean, I think he went jungle, top jungle, but jungle. Ambition, another example. But it's worth saying that again, if you're going to bring in this young talent, make sure to trust your process that led you to discovering them and that leads you to believe that you could develop them. And one split, like I'm always a little bit uncomfortable when I see that players are given less than a split in order, or just one split in order to be able to prove themselves before people move on.
Yeah, I guess the question I would ask you is like, how do you feel about players who like end up showing up really strong in their first split? So for example, I'm looking at a lot of like the rogue players here, where their rookie split is a bunch of highs, and then you see kind of like a little bit of I guess like lesser quality gameplay or like a worse development pattern than you'd probably expect going forward into like the second split. What's your take on that? Like as somebody who's coaching, is that like a super worrying trend, being like, oh, like Finn inspired, like they looked so good in their first split and now it's like kind of mediocre? Like how do you view that?
So I think when you bring rookies into the LEC or the LCS or whichever top league, they have to learn the game, right? The game that you play at LEC level is not the same game that you're playing at ERL level, and it's definitely not the same game you're playing at solo queue level. So a lot of this comes down to learning your fundamentals, and the easiest way to learn your fundamentals is to drill one style really, really hard. Invest all of your hours in just learning to play this one way very specifically, and very in depth. And this can help players improve very quickly, but it can also make you quite one-dimensional, right? And this is an argument that has been put forward about Mad Lions in Spring Split, and it's something that we have to prove people wrong in summer. But often, if you just drill this one style and you can play this style really, really well, it can bring you success in the short term. But eventually, teams aren't going to treat you like a rookie team. They're going to start studying you. They're going to start putting counter strategies in place. And if you only have sort of 2 or 3 plays in your playbook versus a more experienced team that has 40 plays in their playbook, you're just not going to win long term. And this is a danger that all rookie teams come up against, and it's something that Mad Lions, as a rookie team too, has to go and prove that they can overcome next split, especially with things changing so rapidly. So we'll have to see.
So, but like, let's say for example, Mad Lions did have like, you guys finished third this split. Let's say you guys don't end up even qualifying for Worlds, finish 5th or 6th, and some other teams like overtake you or something like that. Mm-hmm. If you're seeing that like trend of their progression? Like, does that worry you at all, or are you like kind of on board with like, oh no, we had like quality scouting, like players are allowed to like have potentially like a bad split, etc.? Like, how do you view that through like your lens?
So it doesn't worry me about my players. It worries me about myself and my coaching staff, right? So one thing which I don't think I've talked about publicly before, but in 2018 I was on stage coach for Splice, and I chose to step down, right? Like I chose to leave on stage duty, and there's a reason why. Okay, so I've been coaching for 9 years. Okay, I've qualified for Worlds 7 times as part of like various other teams, but in 2018 was the first year that I felt that. So 2017, when we talk about Brazil, maybe we can talk about 2017. But I didn't qualify for Worlds in 2017 and 2018. But 2017 was the Ardent Sensor meta. And my team was based around like a carry top laner and a roaming support. And they brought an Ardent Sensor between regular season and playoffs. Okay, let's leave that to one side. But 2018, right, we were beaten in playoffs, and we were beaten in Gauntlet by G2. And the thing about summer 2018 is this was the split where majors were played heavily in bot lane. You had Heimerdinger, you had Ziggs, you had all of these champions. And for somebody like me who learned how to coach and learned about League of Legends in China and then in Brazil, which were quite AD carry-centric metas, yes. This was just something which I'd just never seen before. And Splice ended up scraping into playoffs in 2018 summer. And part of that was on myself as a coach and us as a coaching staff for not adapting, right? And as head coach, I have to take primary responsibility for that because I was leading the scrims, right? But this was just such an alien world that I kind of, it forced me to think about how I sort of approach the game and how I learn the game and why I couldn't help the team improve or adapt in those sorts of situations. And so if you're asking me, if Mad Lions go from third to, let's not even say fifth or sixth, let's say to missing playoffs, okay? If you have a team that is third in spring and then ends up dropping out of playoffs, you have to question how much of that was the players' fault and how much of that was the coaching staff's fault. Because as players, the players have already proven that they can do it. It's not like Mad Lions got smashed 3-0 in the playoffs and didn't win a single game in the playoffs, right? Like we managed to beat G2 in a best of 5. And I mean, we were respectable the second time we played G2, maybe not quite so respectable when we lost 3-0 to Fnatic, but you know, we had 2 respectable playoff series out of 3. And if that was to happen, this split, that is where I would keep an eye on. And that's not to put pressure on Mac. That's my expectations as well of myself as an individual. So yeah. So I wouldn't put too much blame on the players. Maybe some change, like I would look at the support structure around this and try to see where we went wrong outside of the game.
I would also say for that, like that's an example of where Peter's example is an extreme one. Because like I always say this, but I'll say it again, right? When I talk about rookies, I mean the colloquial use of that term. I don't give a fuck that the terminology means you've played one split only because it's for Rookie of the Year award. So as far as I'm concerned, Humanoid is a rookie at the pro level in League of Legends. He just hasn't played long enough and he's only been in for like 3 splits now. So I consider his entire team to be rookies. So if you're going to go as extreme as that, you're not just bringing one guy into a team that has all the established players. He's looking for that. Right, in that scenario, I would even say, Dom, I'm not thinking even 2 splits ahead on that one. I'm thinking, right, I had an awesome first split. That's sort of proof of concept. I brought in all the rookies. One of them was a little bit more experienced, but the rest are pure rookies. I got one style to work. I got pretty good at that style. It didn't let me win the championship. It actually shouldn't in any reasonable region, but I got about as good as I could. 3rd place is pretty good. Then in split 2, let's imagine split 2 goes worse. That's actually something you should even factor in could happen, because in following what he said there, you now are going to expand out the styles you play. You're now going to try some different things, experiment, like maybe a Rome is going to have carry games this split. Maybe you're going to try that out and see what variety you can put in. That will actually, in theory, make you worse. Like one of the things I picked up a long time ago from a really great book about how to learn and practice called The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galloway was a principle that when you're teaching someone to improve something, you don't take, like basically you don't ever do what LS does in those coaching VODs where he tells you every single second that you're doing something wrong. Now, I know why he does that, by the way. He does it because people pay for one VOD and they can watch the VOD 50 times. So the idea is they could watch it and keep getting something new out of it. But if you actually did coach someone for real like that, it's terrible. Because if you try to make them change 50 things, they are going to be completely lost and their game will go to shit. What you do is you fix one thing or you fix like two things and you make it so conscious and purposeful that you're only gradually improving. But the idea is it doesn't wreck your whole game. But even in doing that, as you learn those things, you will initially drop in competency because you're having to even deconstruct, like, what is this principle I'm working with? What's wrong? What's right? Like, all your instincts are getting reprogrammed because what you think you should do is probably wrong, and that's it. You're second guessing. So in that scenario, if I'm Peter, I would be thinking on a 2-year basis. Split 1 went better than expected. Split 2, we don't know yet. That might even be like, they might be the 6th best team. They might be just a playoff team. Split 3, I'd hope you're seeing some progression. Split 4, they should literally be the best they're going to be. At that point in time, like, we haven't got 10 years to build a team. They should win the LEC there if they're good enough for that point in time. But like, you'd also have to be in Peter's position though to be able to have that game plan. Try being a coach and doing that. Try being an org that brought in one good player that had one good split and then was shit, like Misfits. Like those orgs won't give you the time, unfortunately.
But in Europe, the orgs, firstly, they'll back you on this. But secondly, imagine if you're the rookie person, if you're the rookie head coach, and you come into your NA org, okay, and you go and say, I want you to drop this star player because I don't think that we can win the championship with this star player, and I'm only interested in competing for the championship, even if it's not, even if we can't do it in 1 year, 2 years. I want a 2-year plan. Many orgs wouldn't back you. And like if your first year was below expectation, you would be removed immediately. The problem with this is it's really hard to build a kind of a track record of success in this kind of a coaching / academy system. And this is why I think you see such a lot of reusing of talent, right? Because if you're the guy who goes and says, get rid of your star player right now, I want to go full rookies, and you fail, like, you are never going to coach again, right? Because you've gotten rid of the franchise player for the team. You've maybe you've reduced the fan base, maybe. And then obviously people, my experience from NA fans is that they always say they want rookies. And then when the rookie team comes in and they doesn't have the best start, they get really angry with them and they go and say, oh, all of these guys are trash. Obviously, like, you should
think about how much they revile Golden Guardians. And Golden Guardians was the team that kept trying to get like younger players, the ones that they'll need a second chance. It shows how people, what they say is and what they want.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really scary if you're a coach that doesn't have that history, right? And it's very hard to get that history in NA unless you've been on one of the big orgs in NA. Whereas in Europe, you can go and say this, right? You can go and say, look at my history of success with rookies, or you can say, look at my history of success in other regions. I mean, there's been examples of EU coaches who've gone and coached in Turkey, gone and coached in Brazil, gone and coached in Russia. Yeah, exactly. In order to find a platform where you can go and say to the people in power in an org and go and say, trust me, back me. This is what I think is our path forward. And this is one of the things I tend to find with the people aren't so accepting of rookie players, and this includes current players themselves. I mean, Kobe basically said when he went to TSM that we'd said that we wanted to bring in a lot of rookies and it looked like a rebuilding project, and he wanted to win now, right? Like he was somebody who was on Splice and Dignitas EU. He was on the org for 5 years. He went through 2 rebuilding projects on Madlands, and he said, this is not on Splice, and he said to me after Worlds in 2019, I don't want to do another rebuilding project. I want to go and chase. I want to go and chase a title now, right?
How did that work out?
We can talk about that. We can talk about that later, right?
Just a joke. Yeah, we will talk about that.
No, but I mean, we can actually. I think it's a really interesting topic to talk about. But it's often experienced players have a sort of a prejudice against rookies, I found. And if you're the coach, you're not only having to sell the fact that you want rookies to management, you're having to sell to the players that you've already got in your team. I mean, it was an easy sell to Humanoid because I was saying 1 year ago, come and join our team. We believe in bringing up young talent. And so obviously it's a natural... he was the young talent, and then he's like, okay, I'm the young talent. I mean, there's probably going to be some more good young talent, and I have a lot of Humanoid has a lot of self-confidence as a human being. But anyway, but he believed that he could lead that project, right? And I'm not sure that necessarily this isn't the same with all players. The only veteran player that I've actually met that really was in favor of rookies was, ironically, Visit Chachi.
Okay.
I mean, we may not even have been able to sign Humanoid. Basically, to give context, we signed Chachi and we were looking at various mid laners, one of whom is playing in NA right now. I won't name names, but basically, he was balancing his offers, but decided that the NA offer was a more lucrative opportunity. Let's go and say that. So we needed a player, and we had the option between signing like a mediocre veteran player or a star rookie, in this case Humanoid. And people, as a coaching staff, we all wanted the rookies, but we were having trouble winning over our players. And Chachi said, okay, I'm just going to go and play duo queue with this guy. I'm just going to play duo queue with him for 2 days, and I will report back in 2 days and tell you how good this guy was. And he came back in 2 days and was like, you've got to sign this. This guy's really, really good. Sign him. And maybe we don't go to Worlds. Maybe Splice don't go to Worlds in 2019 if Chachi doesn't make that decision, because Humanoid was our best player in summer. I mean, Kobe was good, but Humanoid was like on the second team as a rookie.
That was a very good play, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's a hard sell if it becomes about players versus coaches for who can go and sign that player. But Chachi was the one who, as a veteran, stepped in and said, "Trust me, sign this guy." And so thank you, Chachi. Basically.
So one thing I wanted to jump into quickly is how you balance that compared to immediate success if it's on the table right now. So assuming that you guys as Mad Lions perform at a similar level, with four spots for Worlds especially this year, let's say you keep the one-dimensional style, there's a very good chance that you go to Worlds. How do you value development and learning different styles of play and trying to expand the overall ceiling of your team compared to achieving that immediate success of going to Worlds? Because I assume for an organization like Mad Lions, it would be a huge accomplishment to actually make it to that stage.
I mean, it's worth saying that often Chinese teams are the teams that heavily specialize in one kind of style, right? And tend to just refine that style over and over again and play that style against all comers. And it's worth saying that no team has won a world championship against the meta for the last 4 years. The last team to do it, I would say, was 2015 SKT. I mean, you look at the meta in Worlds last year. Maybe we could talk about Team Liquid in 2019, but the 2019 Worlds meta was mid jungle, all about mid jungle. Yeah, I mean, it was a mid jungle meta, and you could win mid jungle by winning mid lane 1v1. You could win it by winning mid jungle 2v2, or you could roam your support to mid and win 3v2. Right? Those were the 3 ways you could win. But basically, the best mid jungle team in the world won the world championships. FPX. 2018. Was all about solo lanes. Bot lane just didn't matter at all in the 2018 Worlds meta. It's why you saw maybe G2 struggle in Europe. But then when the Worlds meta came, it didn't matter because your bot lane just didn't matter in that tournament. And the team with the 2 best solo laners in the world won, IG. Okay, and you go back.
2017 all bot lane.
Yeah, 2017 all bot lane. But the story that people forget from 2017 is the team that everybody thought was the best team in the world in 2017 was Rox Tigers. And Rox Tigers were smashing.
No, you're wrong. Yeah, that's 2016. They were the best.
2016.
2017 was Longju was the best Korean team.
Oh yeah. Sorry, but it was the Ardent Sensor method. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But sorry, I'm mixing them up because it's the same.
Season 7 was Ardent Sensor.
Yeah, Season 7 was Ardent. So yeah. So I mean Longju, right? And because there's so many overlap with the players. That's it. But basically this was a solo lane team. Super good rotation team. Maybe not the best team fighting team in the world, but they're a 1-3-1 team and played 1-3-1 really, really well. And then they changed the meta completely, and they were no longer a team anymore. I mean, they made quarterfinals, but to me, it's a miracle they made quarterfinals.
Yes,
they went 6-0 in groups, but that just showed how far ahead they were of everybody else. And this is the danger if you tunnel in on one style, right? Maybe you can win the world championship, right? But also, there's a high chance that you're not going to be able to do it. And when there's been huge adaptations between playoffs and Worlds, it's often hurt teams, right? One of the reasons why when China had one dreadful year in Worlds where IG and LGD and all of these teams didn't perform to the level of expectations, that was because they focus on a very what's it called?
Unilateral
style. Yeah, unilateral style, and couldn't adapt when the meta changed a lot. So to me, for a team that wants to get success in the long term, I think it's important that you do both. Right, you refine your style a lot, but you have a style. Your plan B cannot be a 4 out of 10 plan B. It has to be like a 7 or an 8. And obviously, you want your plan A to be 10 out of 10 if you can. So yeah, that's just how I see it. But I think it's important to be able to play multiple styles, because in Europe, compared to actually, I mean, it may sound a bit sort of blowing my own region's horn to go and say this, but in Europe you have a lot of the most flexible teams in the world. I mean, G2 are a team that have forced you to level up. You must level up, and you must be able to be flexible against G2, because if you cannot be flexible against G2, they're just going to beat you. They're just going to play. They have 20 pages in their playbook, and if you only have 2, you're going to lose them. You have to have you don't have to have 20, but you have to have 10, okay, at least. And I don't think that's necessarily true in China, Korea, NA. And I think that this is how Europe is maybe different from the other regions. Doesn't mean that G2 are the best team in the world. Okay, I think G2 are a very, very good team, but I'm not, but sometimes being the best at a specific style can win you championships. And I don't want to say that EU has to prove that they are better than China, right?
Put it this way, one area I would definitely agree with this sentiment, Peter, is this. Yes, maybe G2 aren't the best team in the world, but I tell you what, they're the only team I can think of that is the primary representative of any major region, that you could make almost any meta switch for Worlds and they would still have a chance to win it. I don't think that applies to anyone else. Go look at Jingdong Gaming, fucking T1, C9. You could do a really radical meta switch and fuck these teams. I don't know if you can with G2. I agree with you. I think they've got mad flexibility in that squad.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we saw a little bit of Mad Lions of flexibility in the G2 series where they won, where you saw kha'zix playing Syndra bot lane into Ziggs in the final game. And those are adaptations that you need to make when you're playing a team like G2, or you just won't have a chance.
Yeah, but I mean, this is how, of course, the AD carry meta has switched. I mean, this is the thing that I didn't realize back in season 8, right? This is if you want to be a top tier AD carry now, you have to be a top tier support, because otherwise you don't have Senna in your pool, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be a mage player. Potentially, you have to have a good Karma. You have to potentially have a good Soraka, a good Yasuo, exactly. And these are things which kha'zix has, but it's also things that somebody like Gistic has, right? Gistic, sorry, no, he's not. Kai'Sa, yeah. Sorry, Kai'Sa, if you're watching this. But Kai'Sa, when he goes and plays solo queue, he doesn't queue for support. He queues mid-top. And he climbs solo queue by playing Talon. He was a Talon Z 2-trick when he climbs. And this is why, when the meta is, top lane champion, let's say, since you mentioned the G2 series, Set, okay? He has played 100 set top games at least. Since the champion has come out. Same with Shadow. Shadow queues when he plays solo. Before he joined Mad Lions, now we forced him to do it. Otherwise, he used to queue mid AD carry, and he was a mid player. And he climbed to 1100 LP or whatever it was. I think he was even. I think at his peak he was number 2 on the ladder as a mid laner. But he once played jungle, and since we signed him, he's only allowed to play. He has to play at least 50% of his games jungle, but we had to enforce that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. But yeah, and the same thing with kha'zix. kha'zix can play support. All of our players can play multiple roles. Even I would say Humanoid is the one that maybe his AD carry is his second role and it's not that good. But Arobe started his career as an AD carry. So all of the players can play multiple roles. Hopefully, this gives us some amount of protection against meta shifts.
Obviously, the joke there is he should have said that
Arome can't play anything.
Top lane.
Oh, I was going to say Arome can't play any roles. That's the other one.
I mean, Arome asked me the other day if I thought that he could have made it into LEC as an AD carry, and I told him that.
Did you just say, "Why do you want me to hurt you"?
But we were friends. Okay, I won't go too much into Arome, but Arome had to play a specific style for Mad Lions and Spring Split, right? Because again, we're learning the game in one. We're trying to learn the game with 4 rookies. We had to tunnel in on one style of play, and that one style of play was play through bot, play hard 2v2 bot, and win the game through that way. And that means somebody has to play weak side or shadow carry or whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. And that unfortunate person was Arome, and Arome, took it on board and sacrificed himself for the team.
Yeah, I guess that would explain because there was a lot of it. This is probably the the season where you could play the most AD carries top lane, right? Like Kalista top was so prevalent. Lucian top. We saw Quit into Renekton. Like there's just a bunch of AD carries you could potentially play up there. So I mean, I guess it's this would have been the season for him to actually showcase his AD carry prowess. But I mean, if the team can't play around every lane, can't play AD carry top.
LEC Summer Split starts in a few days, so I had nothing more to that statement.
Okay, we'll see.
But yeah, it's, I mean, the amount of skill, the different skill set that you had to be able to do this split, I think hurt players who've been playing AD carry for a long time. I mean, it's interesting that this is probably Double Lift's worst ever split, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I would say as an individual, and this was because to play Senna is not a traditional AD carry. Senna is I mean, it's a support. You have to the skill set that you need to play Senna is not the skill set you need to play Season 3 Tristana or Sivir or something like that. Aphelios is not actually the bot lane meta for last split was not an AD carry meta. It was all about enabling support, right? Because Aphelios is not a champion which you can 1v9 the game, but it's not. It's about your positioning, but it's about how the team positions around you in a team fight, how the team zones for you, how the team plays around you, right? And that's heavily reliant on your support. You had Senna, which basically required you to play a support. There was Syndra, which required you to play a mage. And then there were all the other normal AD carries. But in 2019, as an AD carry, you had a lot of agency. You had Xayah and you had Kai'Sa. Great. These are two champions which give you huge amount of agency, huge amount of ability to make 1v1 outplays. But you didn't have that in 2020. And I think this is... I mean, somebody like Kha'Zix coming into the league, fresh, able to play all of these champions. He's got a good Yasuo, he's got a good Syndra, he's got a good Senna, and he can play the normal AD carries as well. This gave him kind of a step up, I think, and it's why you saw maybe a lot of AD carries who'd historically been really, really good, really strong individual outplay AD carries, not have as good a summer in 2020 compared to other teams. And that's not on them; it's on their team.
And one of the examples that I thought of when you were talking about this is Reckless, right? And I mean, obviously he had a pretty good split, but one of the big problems that Fnatic had throughout the split was their locked bans on blue side, which included Syndra as one of the champions. And because they could not play Syndra AD carry, they have to ban it, and it allows the other team to have such that was one of the things G2 credited so much for their draft kingdom in the finals, was that they know exactly what the enemy team has to ban, and because they can't flex Syndra and they don't pick Syndra, they don't play it much mid either. They just get such an advantage by being able to take so many of the OPs away from Fnatic. So I mean, that's just another example of a player that's kind of locked into their own AD carry style.
Yeah. But as we were on the topic of Kobe, actually, I think this is interesting, an interesting side topic, right? Like, if you are so Kobe is a good team fighting AD carry. Kobe is he's not a bad player, right? The other thing that most people don't know about Kobe is he's also a really good mage player. He plays Syndra. He plays Veigar. We played Veigar against FPX. We almost beat FPX.
We should have won that game.
Yes, we should have won that game. You're not wrong, but alas, we did not win the game. But he plays these champions, and he wasn't playing any of these champions this split. And Aphelios, super strong champion, but it's not the Aphelios that is winning you the game. It's how the team is playing around the Aphelios, and it puzzles me. And so if you look at how when TSM were at their best, Kobe was on a champion that he could individually outplay, right? When he was on Xayah, yeah, I mean, he could do things individually, right? But when he was on Aphelios and when he was on Senna, those are not... You're relying on your team to be able to do things around you. And when... Dardoch is signed for another team, right? Already. I think. Right, he was signed for Dignitas. He signed for
Dignitas. I can just go talk about...
Yeah, okay, but I can just talk about this then. Like Dardoch doesn't understand how to team fight.
Yes.
I mean, he just doesn't understand. And if you're an AD carry, and Biofrost's biggest strength as a player is he's really good at finding flanks and engagers, right? So your two primary zone control tools as an AD carry, one of them is trying to flank, and the other one is jumping into five people. Jumping into five people to draw attention.
Yeah, we call that
tactical inting.
Maybe, but it was an impossible situation. And if if TSM wanted to play this way, I'm surprised that they didn't pull out the majors, because his Syndra's really like.
Well, the thing is that they couldn't ever get. This is one thing I was going to say is they can't ever get Syndra because Syndra's a permaban against Bjergsen.
Oh, of course, because Bjergsen's insane against it.
Yeah. So every time that they got Syndra, Bjergsen just played it and they won every game. So that takes that option away. But yeah, you can continue with your point. I just wanted to throw that in there for context.
Yeah, that's fair. I forgot about that. Yeah, and obviously Bjergsen's Syndra is pretty insane. No, but his Veigar, his Heimerdinger or something like this. I'm surprised that they didn't at least try those things, because you don't have agency, right? And this is why you see people who rely on being these team fighting AD carries. They didn't really have that good a summer universally. Across all regions except China being the exception. But even in China, like the top Chinese teams that you saw, like Top Esports, are a mid jungle team. Mid jungle. So FPX, Jindong are top jungle team. Like it was mainly about jungle and top side of the map rather than the bot side of the map.
PL playoffs entirely were almost not about AD carries in this particular split.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the exception of Jackie Love, who the reason why he was such a big deal was his shot calling. Jackie Love's an insane AD carry, but it was his shot calling that was the big deal.
Sure.
So going and talk about Kobe on TSM, like it was impossible. It was impossible playing the style that for somebody to look good under those circumstances. So yeah, I think he's going to do well on Misfits. We'll see how the meta is, but again, if the meta is Aphelios and Senna, it's not the AD carry you look at, it's the supporting cast. Sometimes the support, sometimes the other team fighting.
I even think you could make a case Misfits is the perfect team for Kobe to come back into, because the person he's replacing, B-Boy, is someone who had to have fucking translators so he could even talk to his teammates. So you bring in someone in whose only job was literally, your job is just get to a team fight, then start auto-attacking, and we can't talk to you, so just fucking pray that somehow you're stood in the right spot. It's like if some offensive lineman couldn't communicate with the running back and they were just like, I hope you make a hole for me or I'm just going to be running through this guy. Like in this scenario, right, you bring in Kobe, he's already one of the best at that anyway. Just play safe in the lane, get to the team fight, carry the team fight. Like, I think that's going to be a perfect team for him. Like, I think immediately that team joins your team and Origin as the next knocking on the door to be in the Fnatic G2 category.
Well, I mean, you can't rule out Rogue and, XL.
I have ruled out Rogue until I fucking see something, mate. I'm sick and tired of talking about 2020 now. I want to see. I'd like to get inspired to play 3 champions. I'd like fucking Finn to actually do something. Like, you know what? Saying like I play Kled, it's like there's not any Kled in the game. Dumb fuck. You have to actually play the top laners. Like I want to see something, mate. I just want to see something.
But eight out of the 10 AD carries in LEC, I won't say the 2 that aren't, but 8 out of the top 10 AD carries in LEC have good Syndras.
Yeah.
I mean that's just. I was just thinking over it now. I was thinking in my head, would I make the point that he adds an extra level of flexibility because he can play the majors? Actually, in Europe, not really, because everyone plays the majors.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one thing to talk about is just like, so regardless of the fact that his team didn't know how to team fight around him, Kabi individually looked significantly worse just based on like a pure reactionary standpoint to like what was going on in team fights. Just like if you look at like the ways where he was rotating between lanes, like just getting caught, not being able to ult on time, etc. I know you famously had a tweet about it where you're like, how much ping is this guy fucking playing on? Because I've watched this guy for years and it looks like he's playing on like 60 ping or some shit right now. So how do you like see that when you see like the player individually lacking some of the characteristics that they previously had when they were in other regions?
So first thing, I think it's partly to do with trust, right? Like often these kind of things come down to snap, split-second decisions, and that's often, what's happened in scrims in this scenario. Like, can I rely on my support to go and tank this ult for me or do this kind of thing? So if you have a second subsection of doubt, then that's going to be a problem. The thing that made, so people talk about Kobe as a very passive player, but actually I think the reason why Kobe is such a good team fighter is he knows when to flash in to win the fight. So he knows when to hit frontline and he knows when to switch from being passive to aggressive. And you need a lot of faith that your team's going to back you up when you go and do that. I mean, there were games at Worlds where he just like flashed in to 4 people, right? Knowing that Humanoid is, if he makes an aggressive play, Humanoid is always going to be there on his back, even if he does something which is ridiculous. So I think that hurt. Secondly, Kobe is a player who plays a ton of solo queue. So we track a lot of people who play solo queue. I'm going to say that out of all the people in Europe, the person who plays the most solo queue is Caps, and Caps plays, like, when he's playing a lot, he plays like 100 games of solo queue a week. I would not recommend any player, if they're playing scrims and playing stage games, to play 100 games of solo queue a week. I just don't recommend. I could never, in good faith, recommend that as a coach, right? But there's sort of a tier below Caps who's really crazy. People like Upset, people like Perks, and things like this, where they play, a solid. Sometimes it's 40 games, but mostly it's 60 games. Sometimes even more than 60 games when you're around playoffs. And that means that solo queue environment affects somebody like this a lot more than it would another player. And when Kobe was at his best, he was playing 60 games of solo queue, sometimes even 70 coming into Worlds, and that's why his mechanics improved in 2019. He just said, "Okay, I'm going to go from playing 40 games of solo queue a week to playing 70 games of solo queue a week," and then you saw the improvement, right?
So did playing an NA solo queue take a hit on him, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think that was partly how the team fights went, partly the meta, partly the solo queue environment. Because I've watched my players play in solo queue, and holy moly, I've watched games where Shadow is literally 14-1 on Lee Sin, and his team, and the team is up 20 kills to
the game's
12 or something, and the team just doesn't want to win. Yeah. They
won't group or whatever. Yeah, sure.
They're just running it down, and he can like one shot anybody with Lee Sin. Like he could just kill the guy, and because the top laner is like 0-4 or 0-3-1, he doesn't want to play the game anymore. He just doesn't care.
Well, I think that this is actually going to be really interesting, because this kind of leads into another topic that I talked to you briefly before the show, which was that a lot of people are levying a lot of blame towards streamers and stuff for the bad quality of NA solo queue and how many people smurf, etc. So for a while, like, most people pretty much, like, it's not like everyone just decided to smurf for no reason. Like, we were all just like super happy in solo queue, and it was like, ooh, like this is some new untapped market. Let's all just start smurfing. But I'm actually going to, so because of like my drama with Tarzan, I grind an account to Challenger, and I'm going to be streaming like exclusively Challenger games after like LCS on the weekends, just to show how bad NA solo queue is and why no one's fucking playing it anymore. And I just wanted to like hear your guys' take on, like, do you view this like as, oh, streamers are to blame for like all this smurfing? Like, how much does it destroy the game if a streamer is smurfing in lower ELO, specifically like plat, gold, etc.? So like, how do you view this? Because NA solo queue, for me personally, I think it's pretty fucking miserable. Like, I've been pretty lucky in the last 2 days where I've been having the trolls on the enemy team, but our solo queue is pretty much completely unmoderated. There was 2 people today in High Grandmaster just blatantly win trading, like 4 or 5 games I posted about it on Twitter. What's your guys' take on like NA solo queue and streamers smurfing?
And let me go on this one first, because I've got a take on it. First of all, coming from the old school of esports, in the original esports games, Quake, Counter-Strike, one of the most popular things from day one was to watch a demo, so a replay to people in League of Legends, although you don't have them anyway, but you know what a replay is supposed to be, was to watch a demo of a player who's a pro-level player smashing noobs. That was always a go-to, cannot fail, lowest common denominator, fun time, is to watch one of the best players play versus normal people, and to look like a god, like to just be doing fucking everyone up, wrecking them all. That's always been popular. So I totally get why that will always be a popular thing for streamers. In League of Legends, it means you smurf and you start the bottom elos. In Counter-Strike, people start on the lowest account and they take it all the way to global elite. That makes perfect sense as to why that's popular. I don't personally know what's wrong with that. Like, think about this, right? To tell me there's something wrong with that, you would then have to explain why your system of figuring out elo can't figure out within a few games that I'm actually pro and just put me straight in the challenger. If it can't do that, then it's your system that's flawed, not me, the player. Why can't I choose to start a new account and start off? It puts me in gold and then I make my way up. That's just the way the system works. I don't see what the problem is. To me, that's a fake outrage, because think about the logic of it, right? The logic goes, but you're ruining the game of low-level players. Well, am I or aren't I? Because if I am ruining the game because I'm too good, what you mean is I'm trying really hard at a level I'm not good at. Well, logically, I'm going to just go up in wins and I'm going to get out that division immediately. So problem takes care of itself. If I'm not actually that good and I'm not trying, now you can talk about it. If someone smurfs and they int the game or they purposely fuck the game up, I think they should be banned. But the idea that like just being really good, like people being too good at the game is not a problem we have in League of Legends. It's the opposite. It's like he was saying there. It's the guy who doesn't try when you're winning in the game, but he won't let himself be carried. It's someone who gets to a petty fight with you and talk shit. They're the bigger problems to me. The idea that you can't be a pro and just smurf at a level, why not? What rule is there that I have to? What? So even if I'm one of the best players in the world, I must be trapped in the nightmare MMR scenario of only winning 50% of my games. Otherwise, Riot Games has to put 4 pros, and then I have to get fucking 4 Kiwi kids on my team to make me have 50% win rate at all times. Which god wrote that on a fucking piece of stone that I had to endure that? No, homie. I can drop down into gold and start farming noobs. So personally, you can see I've got a pretty liberal view on the matter.
What do you think, Peter?
I think there's two questions here, right? The number one is about challenger games, and the number two is about sort of smurfing, from gold and unranked to challenger sort of streams. Mm-hmm. So I've seen a lot of people complain about the toxicity in high level solo queue, mm-hmm. But who is going out there trying to make a difference as a pro player, right? Like it's normally the people who are complaining are normally the pro players who are using it kind of like an excuse, kind of not an excuse, well. but yeah. So saying that it's this is why we can't perform well on the international level. It's because our solo queue is too bad, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm watching Sven and Vulcan play solo queue and like try their best every single game, and who else is doing it? Like there's 50 LCS pros.
Yep.
Put it this way, people probably know a very recent drama was the one where Doublelift called out Voyboy for not calling out Tyler 1, right? And that's a perfect example because Doublelift himself, when he was on Team Liquid, would duo queue and stack with TSM players and just all be like, on their stream. And then they have the goal to ever call anyone else out after that. Like that scenario is like you're saying, Peter, their logic is, well, things are just fucked and they're the way they are. And so we can't be held accountable. It's like you are part of the problem. You can only say that if you're not part of the problem. Like if you're the guy like Sven grinding and telling people like that thing you said, Dom, on Twitter's genius, where all he does is when he's in the lobby, he just types like, pick your best champs, play for Elo. Like he gives people the right mental frame going into the game of like, just play to win, dude. And then he tries hard. He can then call out solo queue. Yeah. If you're part of the problem, you can't call it out and then turn around and do the same shit. Because think about it, right? If you're Doublelift, by the way, probably the most influential player NA could ever hope for. And I'm a guy who's coming up and I haven't even got to academy level and I see you fucking around. Well, why should I play properly then? You're the pro, mate. You're the 10-year veteran. Why should I be the one that has to try to make your environment better when you won't do it yourself?
And I mean, this hurts players coming up, right? Because if I see a player, so in EU, there's consequences, right? Like, I'm not saying that people who are playing in the ERLs never troll games or they never, they never do bad things, right? Mm-hmm. But you do that enough, and your career as a pro player may just be stopped, right? Like,
is it though? Because like I remember, I mean, Nick literally disco nunu'd me on stream with proof. Nothing happened to the guy. Like,
and what team's he on now?
He doesn't have a career now, to be fair.
True. He doesn't have a career, but there was no actual like punishment that was put in place. Like I feel like that has something to do with the fact that like maybe he played like he went from being an LCS player to being like a low level ERL player to just not being good enough anymore. I feel like no one wants him anymore. I don't think that necessarily impacted his behavior in games. I will say though, like if you're a fucking pro player and you're in like low master, it's probably an issue. Like, you shouldn't let 30-year-old Dom outrank you. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I know that it has a positive effect on a lot of people. Like, Jizuke was somebody who was notorious for flaming in solo queue before he was in EU LCS, and he toned it down a bit. I mean, I'm not going to say Jizuke... He's much better now.
He's much better now. I play with him.
Jizuke is not the hill that I'm going to die on, right? I'm not going to say that Jizuke is like the angel of the world, right? But mm-hmm. he made an effort because he realized it was important. It's important for your career, right? And the problem is that because the NA solo queue environment is so bad, when you see somebody climbing up, you see the new 16-year-old climbing up, there's always questions about how good this guy actually is, okay? So there are benefits for pro players to make an effort. There are benefits for younger players. there are benefits for streamers because it's less stressful for you guys. But I don't know. I mean,
that's the main thing. Is like I feel like a lot of people can't really appreciate what's going on in a challenger game. So like it's so frustrating playing a challenge, and like you're gonna have the higher you go on the ladder, the more games you're gonna have where like you're not gonna be able to just win the game no matter what. Like if you're playing against Sven Vulcan, they shit on your bot lane and you're getting permanently invaded. You start falling behind the enemy jungler. The enemy jungler is also a pro player. You're just not gonna win the game. Like you're probably just gonna lose based on that fact, and it's not gonna be like a loss where you're able to like showcase much. It's just gonna be like a very slow standard loss, and you're not gonna look the best. People are going to shit on you in chat. Like it's not going to be a good experience on stream. Whereas generally speaking, the way that you get the most viewers is when you're in a good mood on stream, right? And people that permanently play high elo are going to have more frustrating experiences that they're just not going to be able to really showcase their personality. So that's the main reason for streamers doing it, and that's like one of the main reasons I smurfed so much in the last year. Is I would go through these spurts where I would like do an unranked to challenger, or when I went to Europe, I obviously only I didn't like smurf. I started an unranked to challenger, but I played like throughout like the high elo, etc. But then like after a while of that, it feels like it starts devaluing you as a streamer, where everyone's like, dude, this guy isn't that good. I just saw him lose to like this player here, and it's like, well, like come on, look at the context of the game. No one actually knows what the fuck is going on.
Sure. But to answer the second part of that question, about these unranked to challenger challenges, right? Working on the basis that you have leveled your account up from level 1 to level 30 yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which we all do.
Which I'm sure everybody does, right?
Mm-hmm.
If then I don't see a problem, right? Then maybe there's a problem with how matchmaking works. If you've leveled up your account up to level 30 and you are still being placed in these kind of games and you're not rapidly getting out of these games very, very quickly, then you can see maybe the what's it called? It's not called ELO, is it? It's called
the MMR.
The MMR. Sorry, ELO is much of the other. Your MMR maybe gains are maybe not high enough. If that's a major problem. Of course, if an account was acquired by other means, then I sympathize a bit with Riot.
You make a good point there as well, by the way, which is, again, Riot Games, who, remember, if we're just talking about the actions they take, are treating every person in the world who gets a new League of Legends account as a rank beginner. So if Caps makes a new League of Legends account, he has to rank it up to 30. There's no account he can buy, there's no account he will be provided that starts at level 30 and just allows him to play it. So in this scenario, that's Riot Games' own fault. They make you go through the system. Everyone has to do unranked to challenge you in that logic.
For pro players, they do offer accounts. They offer, I think,
maybe, but do they actually do it for solo queue?
Yeah, they do it for solo queue, where they give you accounts that start at like Diamond 4, Diamond 3
MMR. How recently did they start doing that?
About a year and a half ago, I think.
Oh, it's not so long ago. Then fair enough.
So it's a pretty new system, but the thing is, like the other part of it that people aren't, that we haven't even talked about yet, is like, so we've touched on the player experience for everyone else, but the fact that these are just significantly more popular and they're better for your own brand as a streamer. So if I do an unranked so I'm gonna start playing challenger games on stream exclusively. I guarantee you, if I start an unranked account, I will get way more viewers than playing those challenger games. Like that is just that is what the people crave, right? So the other side of it is like, so I'm going to put myself through this hell, and I'm going to do all this type of shit, like where I'm sitting through long fucking queue times, 20 minutes plus, with dodges, sometimes 30 minutes. I've had a queue on stream back when I used to only play high elo in like season 7. I had a queue for 2 fucking hours on stream, where it just became a meme, and I ended up posting it because I was playing in the middle of the night and like other circumstances, etc. But the fact that like you deal with all this for a lesser monetary gain, people devalue your brand. When you smurf, everyone just loves you, like you might get some Reddit hate nowadays, but in general, you're getting more money, you're getting more followers, more exposure, your chat is enjoying it more, people think you're better. Like if I play a challenger game and I narrowly beat a pro player, people won't say anything. If I go into like a plat game and I have 23 kills, people are gonna be like, oh my god, look at how good Dom is on Kane.
Along those lines, by the way, Dom, if you're out there and you're one of these players we were talking about, some like guy who made it to LEC or LCS, but you only got a few games or half a split and then they kicked you, do that, stream and do an unranked to challenger, and all the people who watch you you do that are going to think you're a god. Because once you're like just like plat level and you're still owning everyone, if like a mid laner, you are literally going to have all your highlights are going to be on Reddit. Like you're going to get so much more fame than actually being fucking good at like challenger level, believe it or not.
I mean, isn't that what Bunny Fufu did?
Yep. Definitely.
Essentially, yeah.
I mean,
mate, so you just already does that now.
but to be honest, the unranked to challenger thing isn't for me personally. It's not a major issue. The problem that I have
Of course not.
is when I go onto YouTube and I go and see all these kind of clickbait videos from people who are very clearly diamond level but have kept their elo at silver gold deliberately to go and post their 16-2 full AP Garen special super build. Okay, then I think there's an issue there, right? But if you're talking purely unranked challenger, it's either a problem with the elo system, MMR system, for recognizing and putting you up fast enough, or we really have to question if action should be taken against somebody who's deliberately like just messing up people's games and not trying hard. So, in order to stay like silver.
I mean, I just think that it starts at the top, right? Like, if they want people to stop smurfing, make Challenger more enjoyable to play. Make the games more balanced. Like, so that means reduction of autofills. Because a lot of times, like, I mean, when I'm really trying to climb, I have to dodge, like, a lot of games.
I've got a question for you, right? I'm just saying this is a complete layman. It might be a terrible idea. But for NA, would it actually be better if there were more slots in Challenger? Like if there was 100 challenger slots instead of 50, would that help?
There's 300 right now, so it'd be like.
Oh, sorry, fair enough. Whatever. So I thought it was like back in the day when it was like 50.
Yeah. I don't know if that would help. I think that there just needs to be more incentive to play high elo, like for players. Like there needs to be something that you gain from playing these games or achieving a certain rank that makes people want to do it, and the game quality needs to be raised. And I think that the easiest way to do this is like Riot monitoring high elo. Like there's no way.
Should there be something like to be an LCS or LEC pro, you have to maintain a certain rank, and if you don't, like you don't get kicked out, but you just get fined or something, or you get some like minor penalty. Would something like that to incentivize people to play be good?
I think that actually is a decent idea. Right now they do have something like that, but it's like Diamond 3. I think you have to be,
which is a ridiculous standard, obviously. Yes,
which is just like nothing, right? Like shit. Like
that sounds like they just don't want to punish someone, but they put in the rule to sound like they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see it be, like Master 200 LP plus, something like that,
reasonable.
where you at least have to play like high risk games. But then also, I think that there just needs to be more there needs to be like somebody. There needs to be special admins
just for challenger games
exactly.
that literally watch the games, and if they see someone, you don't even have to report. They just go right. This guy's toxic, get him out.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I can already tell you that's an area where League of Legends is massively behind, because you know what? We basically have that in European CSGO. It's called Face It Pro League. They have a thing, right, which is like Challenger. It's only pros or people at the skill level of a pro get invited to play in it. But because it's not just like Face It as a platform, by the way, it's like League of Legends. It like queues you for a game based on what level you're at. Now, listen, there's thousands and thousands of people playing on the Face It platform who are nobodies. It's like me and you could all jump in now if we have a CSGO account and play a game. Yes, I get it. You don't want to have an admin physically watch our game at a low level. But if you're talking about let's say like 50 games a day at the top level, and these are pros, and you're trying to build a community and build a culture, and it's worth whatever it costs to hire those 20, 30 admins. It would literally, I think it would pay dividends what it could improve for this scene.
Yeah, or like having people, like you could do it even through the honor system, right? So you have people that play high ranks. If you're a challenger player that also is honor 5, you can have some type of like expedited reporting.
Right. Okay.
Like for people, because I think that like when you look at these are not situations where it's like, oh, this is a really like advanced situation that maybe no one could tell. Like the situation I posted on Twitter today, there was 2 people blatantly win trading, like as in one guy is running it down mid. Every single time he faces this other guy, I have multiple screenshots. If anyone looked at the game, you don't even have to know League of Legends. If a silver player looked at the game, they'll be like, oh, this guy is not trying. Like, he's duo laning mid in a challenger game with his mid laner as a top laner. Like, this is definitely like target griefing, or like this is some type of bullshit. Like, there just needs to be some way to remove this so that people, because like for me, if I'm streaming that, I don't want to play another game on that account. What's the point? Even though I won the game because I was lucky and I was on the team of the guy getting win traded, I have to queue up again, and if I see this guy on my team, the other guy I have to dodge, I have to lose my own LP for that. Like, it's just such like a fucked up system in my mind.
Sure. I agree, but I mean, there's a wider question here, which is what is the point of climbing up in high elo, right? I mean, like, if you climb up in the Korean ladder, let's not talk about Koreans. Let's talk about a Vietnamese player. Okay, so let's say that I want to be the next SOFM or the next Levi, and I want to get a profession and have a career in this profession. I'm going to go, like, playing solo queue is my way of being scouted, right?
Yes.
Like, there's prestige associated with climbing to 1,000 LP. Like, if you are a Vietnamese player and you climb to 1,000 LP on the Korean ladder, you definitely get a job in Vietnam, and maybe you get a job in, like, LDL, right? In Chinese second division, because it has value, right? But in the current environment as it is, I mean, there are things that orgs can do more, right? Like, I mean, this is something 100 Thieves have been doing with their 100 Thieves, what's it called, 100 Thieves Next or something. I remember where basically there's the implicit promise that if you climb high enough in solo queue, we will spot you and we will recognize you and we will give you a chance. We will give you a shot, right? But parts of the big problem with the recycling old talent in NA is that people don't believe that this is an implicit agreement, right? Like, if I climb to 1,000 LP in NA Challenger, maybe somebody will laugh at you for saying, oh, you spent all of this time with 2 hour queue times or something just to get 1,000 LP, and nobody cares, right? What are you going to do? It's not going to get you a job. It's not going to get you an opportunity. It's not going to get you noticed. I mean, there are many people who can make the first move in this kind of thing. Yes. Yeah. Putting moderators on it is good, right? But I mean, also teams can also go and say, look, you climb high. If I was advising something, I mean, I think this could be a really good PR move. If you're an NAO, you can have that advice for free. Say if you climb above 1,000 LP or 1,200 LP or whatever, we will try you out. We will try you out for our academy team. Maybe we have a third team who goes and plays in the. Well, what's the third?
It's like an amateur. It's like an amateur
collegiate. Yeah. Like we'll like fund you to go and play in some of those tournaments. We'll see how you do with, like, in a coaching environment, in a team environment, and we will give you a shot to go pro. Yeah. And then watch how seriously people will start to take solo queue. People will take it very, very seriously. Yeah, and this is something which as far as I'm aware, 100 Thieves are the only team that have done it. But you get, it doesn't even have to be all 10 orgs. You get 5 orgs going and saying something like this. These orgs start to go to these amateur tournaments. You have 100, I don't know what it's 100 Thieves Next. You have, like, Golden Guardians. I don't know what they would be called, but like something the third or something, right? And then you go and see these teams, and they get publicized more by the main teams on the orgs. You get lots of goodwill for improving NA solo queue. You get more exposure to these young players, and you can bet that your pro players, because will get better practice, they'll improve, and when you go to international competition, they will be better, right? Yep. And how much does it cost you? Like a couple of $1,000s? I mean. The benefits are
yeah, I mean, there's
just an investment in the future. Yeah,
there's other things that could be done, like potentially putting like promoting people's streams that are at that super high rank in the client itself, so you can go to the client and you can click on, like, a streams page in the client, and it shows, hey, these are, like, some of the highest rated players right now that are currently streaming live on Twitch, and then those people that are getting 10 viewers suddenly are getting maybe 75 or 100 or 150 or something like that. Like, I think that's another good way to kind of give some exposure, or, like, there needs to be some type of, like, a reward.
That's a good idea.
For grinding high-elo. But yeah, I mean, I thought that would just be an interesting topic to bring up in general, just because, it's,
I mean, backpacks and jackets, like, are better than nothing, but not much better than nothing.
Oh no, I mean, I can show you right now. This hold on one second. I would say, I don't know if you know what this is. This is not a trash bag. This is actually not a trash bag. It might look like a trash bag. It might sound like a trash bag, but this is actually a Challenger jacket. So I don't know if this is better or worse than nothing. All I would say is I tried to use it as a trash bag, and there's too many holes in it, so it doesn't actually hold up anything, as well as, like, like a hefty bag. But You know, it's all right. It's all right. I mean,
That
we'll
looks
take it.
cheap as fuck. That's just some shitty bomber jacket with like the fucking logo
Oh,
on. Dude.
it's really, really bad.
Come
quality.
on.
It's really bad.
Exactly. There's another thing, by the way. If you're going to make a jacket like that and you're a company that literally just prints fucking money from the game, make it like a fucking straight fire Gucci jacket or something. Something that's like luxury that some kid who's an 18-year-old would want to own.
Yeah, I mean, aren't they sponsored by
It's a
Gucci?
huge expense. It's like
Louis Vuitton?
So the problem is that, like, you know, this is an additional expense that maybe Riot, you know.
Oh yeah, my bad, Peter. It's better for them to spend $700 million on a fucking imaginary dragon to fly around the stadium for 4 seconds.
But it benefits. Like I'm saying, but this is why, like, the teams have an incentive to go and do this, right? Like,
Sure.
I mean, and this is something this is kind of. Just to segue into going and talk about Brazil, for instance, this is something that matters in Brazil. You climb high up in Brazil, you will get a chance on a team. Like, I mean, people try out players all of the time. The solo queue in Brazil is only seven people. So, yeah,
Get it? Yeah,
very funny. No, but the ping is 7. Okay, in Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, and actually, if you
Wait a minute, the ping is better for Brazilians than it is for Americans.
Oh, way better. I mean,
it's much better.
it's not
Give
even
me a
close.
break.
Wait.
Give me a break.
OCE has the same thing. Like OCE, I was in Melbourne when I played in OCE, and the ping was like 18. And here, I recently got better internet in my building, and I think I have one of the lowest pings you could possibly have in LA, and it's 53. Whereas, like, in every other server, it's like when I went to Europe, for example, I was in the Netherlands, I had 20. You know,
yeah.
like
If you're in the, it's normally about that. In Berlin, it's normally about 40. But yeah, then, you know, maybe relocate the servers somewhere else next to where where your competitive teams are. Maybe.
Yes.
I still can't believe that's a thing to this day, that everyone's just cool. Like all those owners, who, by the way, remember, we're not in the old world where the owners had to be grateful that Riot just lets them compete. The owners are essentially partners with Riot in the LCS. That's the whole point of the franchise system. So the world in which those owners are just cool with the server just being like 3 times higher ping than it used to be, like, I don't get that. Like, if you're like Steve Arneset, Reginald, aside from ruining your own orgs every split, what the fuck are you actually doing? Like, have you ever thought of actually improving the environment for the players who play for you? That might make them play better.
I mean, I'm sure there are reasons behind the scenes that we don't know.
I bet they're shit.
Well, I can't comment. I don't know what the reasons are. But
Yeah, no one can come up with even speculative reason. That's good.
the question is winning in NA enough? And I mean, like, people will ask that question. Like,
some people will say so. Yeah.
Yeah, but people will ask that question, right? Like, it was should Spring Split be cancelled? Do you remember the Players Association?
Yeah, it was like 70%.
Yeah,
wanted
said. Yeah, so you know, it has to start somewhere with somebody, right?
Yes.
And credit to 100 Thieves, like they have started to do something like that. But I don't see the way out. But you know, you see light at the end of the tunnel. You know, you see people like Sven and Vulcan trying their best. You see
props.
You see like 100 Thieves doing this. I'm sure other orgs are doing things. I don't know the NA scene that well, right? I'm sure other orgs are taking steps in this direction. So people see it's a problem and they're trying to make the first steps. So maybe it's not completely doomed in the future. But to me, to be honest, when I see people complaining about this, I have very little sympathy, because I mean, unless you're Sven, if you're literally Sven and you are the guy who's tryharding, then Sven gets to complain. Vulcan gets to complain. But nobody else is allowed. Nobody else is allowed to complain. In my mind.
I mean, that's part of the reason for the grind is like I want to be able to complain. So I originally put in the grind to complain, but now I'm putting in the grind again, and it's like, okay, so what are people gonna fucking say? It's like I can just show you guys how shit fucking NA is. Like I'll stream the games and I will just show you how bad the fucking games are, and like then you can decide as a viewer, like, is this worth playing? Like you'll have some lens into why no one is doing this themselves.
Sure. I've often wondered why NA players don't try, like, if you think you're so I've heard the complaint a lot from various sources saying that, you know, NA mids don't think that they have a chance to play in LEC, so they don't bother, or they switch roles and things like this. But I've often wondered why NA mids don't try to like prove themselves in Europe or somewhere like this. Like, if you think you are good, if you think like you're serious about pushing yourself to the next level, why not try and spend a split in Europe? Try to try to prove that you have.
Here's what you do. You know what? Listen, you gave a good example with the mid example, because obviously you're right. That specific role, there is a perception that you're supposed to role swap to support and try and make it into LCS. But okay, I'll give you an example, just because this is literally an example that I'm specifically telling this person, do this, and you will actually have a chance to be a pro again. If you are Dardoch, this is what you do. You actually go to your, when Golden Glue did that thing where he went and did like a Korean boot camp and tried to prove that, I'm trying to grind up and trying to make, the problem he had was he went back to NA and he just played for shit teams again. If you are Dardoch, your equivalent to that is you announce publicly, I want to play in an ERL team. Now, here's the thing. You have such a big name. You know what? A team like Big or someone might give you a chance. They might actually say, you know what? Fuck it. This is actually worth it. We're not going to pay this guy much salary. You go over to Europe. Not only, by the way, do you get the life experience of living in a different country, adjust to things, but in Europe, you are not going to get scrutinized and harassed for being toxic in the same way. And then you might actually make it. You might make it as a pro.
I mean, and this is why I have a ton of respect for Tearwolf, right? I mean, sure Tearwolf came to Splice. For people who don't know who Tearwolf is probably the
Latin
most winningest. Yeah, he's a Latin American jungler. He's probably won the most Latin America South championships of any Latin American player. Okay, and he said, "Okay, I'm capped here. I've won the championship 4 times in a row. Like I went to Worlds and I got smashed. I didn't win a single game at Worlds. What can I do? And I'm going to come and I'm going to play academy level. I'm going to go from being like one of the top players in my region. Yeah, and I'm just going to go and play for some academy team, like with no guarantee that I'm going to find any success. But I want to go and test myself to see how I would do." And he staked a lot. It didn't work out in the end. He's in Brazil now. But he gave it a shot. It didn't work out, but at least he gave it a shot. And I don't see that many other players who are willing to take that shot. Either from North America, from Brazil. You see people from Turkey, but it's easy because they play on the same stuff. You're not sacrificing anything as a Turkish player or a Russian player to go and do this. But you have to back yourself at some point. And I mean, when I went to Brazil, it was essentially this was something that I wanted to do to see if I could find success in Brazil. To get out of my comfort zone and to go and do this as a coach. And I'm sure players can do it too. I'm sure like the marketing value you could get as an academy team in Europe. Well, let's not say an ERL team, right? Because I don't know how academy teams would function like this. But say you're Big or say you're LDRC, you sign Dardoch, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to get tons of eyes on you watching the game, right? Like they're going to be watching you. They may be memeing you. They may be like taking the piss out of you. They may be insulting you, right? But they're going to follow you and they're going to be interested in you. And yeah, it was the same thing that we found with Tearwolf. There were a lot of he's hated in Latin America North is Tearwolf. So whenever our academy team played in the Spanish League, you would have lots of Latin America South people coming and then Latin America North people coming to insult the Latin American South people who were cheering him. But if you were Dardoch, what's the worst thing that can happen, right?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is
you don't succeed.
Yeah, definitely. I think the main thing that comes down to it is that the ERLs just pay significantly less than academy teams. Yeah. Like the average academy salary.
Yeah, but it's got to be about more than money, though. That's the point. If you Dardoch, the point is to be a champion one day, right?
No, but no, there's a difference, like how people act and how people say what people say and how they say they act are 2 different things, right? And generally, I'll always look at how people act.
Yes. You should by default, mate, because everyone tells you they want to win. Everyone tells you they want to do it the right way. Every NA pro tells you solo queue should be improved. The question is, look at how they behave. A person's actions will always tell you who they are. Always.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just as an example so we have Discord, right? And I can see when the other coaches, because I'm linked to. This is maybe giving away competitive advantage, but I don't really care. I can see when the other coaches are not playing League of Legends or they're not watching League of Legends. I can see when they're playing Skyrim. I can see when you're playing Civ 6 or something because your Discord is showing me. And like when I'm there at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning studying VODs and I see this other guy here who's playing Civ 6 or Championship Manager or something like that, I'm thinking, I'm getting an advantage on you. And some of these people, I'm not going to say a lot of these people because I don't want to cause a ruckus in this area. But if you say I'm willing to sacrifice everything to be the best, then you have to sacrifice everything. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be pleasant. You're going to have to gamble. It may not work out in the end. But the question is, what is League of Legends to you? Is it a career or is it something you want to be the best at?
Yeah,
and that's
it's
that's the question.
I would say it's a career for almost like most of these academy players. That's why you see academy players that have been like in an A academy for 4 or 5 years. It's not like they just want to be the best no matter what. It's that already is an accomplishment. Being an academy player, getting paid, like having all your expenses taken care of, and then making 60, 70K a year. That's more than enough for these players to feel super validated in what they're doing.
Dude, you know how sick it is to know that they can make that much money from NA Academy? Like, that's what some motherfucker like Burks probably made the first year he was in G2, and that might be more. That might be more than he made.
That was more than my salary in Season 5, and I was the second highest paid jungler in the league next to Medias.
Yep. But I mean, this is, there's a difference between... I'm very sorry about this, Thorin, but this is the difference maybe between Froggen and Kobe, right? Like, why is Froggen in NA? You could argue that there were times he
just wants to get paid the most money. I've said this for 3 years, mate. What I don't get is why you guys always strawman me that I've been the best team.
I'm sorry.
I never believed it for a second.
Okay, but
that's your version of what I would say. But keep going anyway. Pick up some other cool shit for me to say. Maybe it'll be funny.
I'm sorry. Like, I genuinely, I didn't know. Okay, so I don't mean to. But Kobe basically when he went to NA, he was like, I want to win a title. I want to win a title before I retire, and that's why I think this whole TSM situation is really sad. So I mean, just to go and segue, because there are people out there who do want to win, and Sven burying his pride, where every time he goes and plays a solo queue game. I don't want to say suck it up. Like,
he always
suck it up to his teammates.
Also, do you want to know another? Do you want to, if it's open season on everyone's boys, do you want to know another difference between Froggen and Kobe? If Froggen's in a team, no matter how bad it is, he still says, "Give me the fucking ball, give me my champion, and get the fuck out of my way." You know what Kobe does? Sits there going, "Oh, the coach just wouldn't give me the ball, and then they wouldn't fucking scream for me, coach. Like, this is just so unfair, isn't it?" It's like, nah, homie, that's just being a bitch.
I mean, Spice always gave Kobe the ball. Like he always
used to spend 25 minutes doing it.
I mean, there are many ways to get to 35 minutes. Some of them look good, and some of them don't.
Indeed.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I just want to see what ends up happening in NALCS, because I'll drop something here. This is like word on the streets. I haven't confirmed this with everyone, but just from hearing about the scrims and everything, a lot of these players that we consider old and washed up that shouldn't be getting time, we're gonna see some interesting stuff. I heard that Zion is probably gonna get stage time over Hanser, which is crazy. Like, there's going to be like some level of Zion potentially playing LCS.
I have a question for you on this though, Dom, right? Because there's the problem I have with that topic, right? I know the problem now is Zion Spartan had so many years, he was sort of bad. People are going to forget this. But if you go back to like season 4, season 5 particularly, he was extremely good. Like, he was one of the few NA, like for me, he was like Licorice's now back then. Like, he was a guy who could play weak side, could carry, could play every champion. So here's the problem I have with that one is he almost veers into the territory I have of like, you should never 100% bury people who were really good.
Exactly.
Like, I would put it this way, I don't think it's impossible if he really got his whole life together. Maybe he could even be good again. Like, I realize I've been wrong on a lot of those ones. Like, I keep thinking Afromu's going to do it, but it hasn't. So, like, that's my question for that one is, listen, if it was someone who was just an average player back in the day, like Jack's fault, and now this keeps sticking around, I do think they're check stealing. But I almost could believe it's not impossible Zion Spartan could get his shit together. What do you think? You've known him a long time.
But personally, I don't know. I think that Hanser was actually just good last.
Hanser's always been good. Mate.
I think he's been like, but not like I considered him top 4 for pretty much like his entirety.
He was one of the only good players on his team. Him and Claus are golden guardians.
So that is super weird, especially considering that like Zion looked so weak. But then the other one, I mean, it's going to be the same. It falls in the same vein. So I'll mention the other thing that I've heard of is that Huni is potentially going to be playing over Kumo. And Kumo had like...
Who's getting taken out then?
So then Bang is getting taken out and definitely potentially is playing as well. Now these are all unconfirmed, but these are like I've heard multiple people saying that this is what's happening in scrims at least. You know?
I mean, there's always. So the point I was about to make is there are people that are whose job it is to make these decisions. Who actually they have logic in what they're trying to do. In theory, And therefore, it's worth reverse engineering to say what the logic for this is. I mean, a good example of this is.
And I'll tell you what the logic is with the Huni one is that Kumo was a role player on that team, right? Like that's pretty much how they ended up playing. Was that Kumo would play the Aatrox, the early pick Ornn, the set, etc., and you just put him up there, and he's never going to fucking hard carry a game, but he's never going to lose you the game. Well, he was losing some games in the beginning of the split, but by the end of the split, he was never going to lose you a game either, really. And you would just be able to play like heavy through mids. Sven and Jizuke would try to take over the game, and then you play side lane 1-3-1 later on in the game. So, and then like, I guess when you put in Huni, you add in that element of carry, and then definitely in Bang, like obviously Bang is a little bit better than Definitely, maybe a lot better than Definitely, but it's still the same. Like 80 carry is still 80 carry. You're gonna farm, you're gonna carry the game late, etc.
But I mean, it's a question. Maybe this is they don't feel that they can advance anymore, right? I mean, I think an interesting comparison to this is something which Team Liquid got a lot of flame for at the start of the split, right? When they brought in Boxer and they let xMithi go. And I mean, it's interesting because there were two junglers who were available in the offseason, European junglers. So if we're not going to talk about Korean, and those two junglers were Xerxes and Boxer. Okay, and Team Liquid went to Worlds, and basically they didn't play that well, and they didn't look like they could beat any of the strong teams at Worlds, and they clearly like the most obvious plug and play. Like I've heard rumors that xMithi wasn't playing like enough solo queue and he wasn't taking the game that seriously, and I mean I can only talk about what's in the public because I don't know what's going on.
I mean, we literally on the last episode of the show had someone say that he like turned up to an LCS game drunk like a few years ago. So, well, hungover rather. I should clarify.
But the most obvious plug and play person would have been to bring in Xerxes, right? Xerxes had a better Worlds than Boxer. He was higher on. He was like second team LCS, whereas I think Boxer was not even top 3, and he plays exactly the same style as xMithi, right? But they chose to go with Boxer. Now, why did they choose to go with Boxer? It's not just because Boxer played for Fnatic. It's because, and you know, Boxer has limitations, right? But there's one thing which Boxer is really, really good at, which is playing through mid, and playing with his support, right? Which is the thing that was stopping Liquid from progressing at Worlds. I mean, basically, Liquid got completely messed up with the Worlds better because Liquid and Team Liquid were a team that had an insanely strong 2v2 bot lane, which they could take advantage of at MSI. But come Worlds, the better was mid jungle rotating into bot, right? So you could win this, you know, by roaming with your support, by winning 1v1 mid, which they couldn't do, by winning 2v2 mid, which two mid jungle, and they had a jungler who couldn't play with his mid laner and couldn't play with his support. Okay, so they brought in a jungler who is famous in Fnatic he has many weaknesses, but the two things that he can definitely do is play with his mid laner when it was Caps and play with his support when it was Hidasang. And so this is an example of a trade which maybe doesn't make sense, but somebody's offering you something to fill in the gap that you lack. So if you look at the Deftly thing, the Huni thing, maybe Evil Geniuses think that in order to be able to beat Cloud9, they have to be able to win through the top side of the map, because they can't win through the bot side. Like, I mean, to be honest, it didn't look like Bang and Zeyzal last year could compete 2v2 with
no one could. Sven and Vulcan.
Yeah. But if you were to say to me, who is the one person that you should try to target a bit more on Cloud9 compared to the others, it's probably Licorice.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I don't think Licorice is a bad player, but you know, maybe you think Cloud9, we want to win an LCS title. We cannot win an LCS title without going through Cloud9. You know, maybe it's better to just go and give it a try, and if it doesn't work out, we'll go back to what we were doing before. Maybe, and when I look at that, that's maybe what I think, right? It's not what I would have personally done, but you know, there's always logic behind these kind of things. Maybe there's
I even go like with the angle that, like as you say, listen. Jizuke is best when you can play a split push game. So how does it help to have one of the best Korean team fighting AD carries of all time? Yep. It doesn't, does it? Like those two people there are odds as to how you want to win the game through them. Whereas you know what, you can absolutely have Huni just be a fucking top laner only and just play out like that. Yep. He's done his whole career.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like. Yeah. Considering how bad Huni played last split, where he's just perma-dying, and you gave him like counter matchups on counter. It's not like Dignitas didn't try to play through top lane, and it was like, oh, Dignitas was all playing through Frog, and like, no, they tried all the carries they could top lane. And
of course.
And the funny thing is they tried these carries into Kumo. And Kuma was winning versus Huni on the opposite side of the matchups. They were playing the Fiora into Kumo's Aatrox. Like Huni was playing Fiora into Kumo's Aatrox, and Kuma was winning as the Aatrox side of it. So it's so weird to me that they went through that like. I mean, this like obviously this could maybe not happen. Maybe this is just a scrim thing that's going on. But it's so weird to me that you would replace a player that like was standard when you had a formula that at least worked to get you guys to third place, you know?
Let's be real. Nobody in the world can actually fucking see Huni for what he is if they have a chance to have him in their team. See that special caveat, I put it on there. Everyone, when he's not in their team, like points out his flaws. It's so obvious. Everyone will point out that other teams are stupid for getting him. But I tell you what, nobody can fucking resist. Like, but what if I had him? What Huni would I get? Everyone just imagines like his peak level, none of the flaws. They'd remove it all. Like somehow everyone can just see because the problem is he does have talent, obviously. But I'm amazed how many people are willing to ignore all the baggage. It is crazy. Because what's funny is, obviously, Dardoch's problems mainly come from his external, outside of the game shit. But as far as having baggage, for me, Huni should have a rep like fucking Dardoch's. Like, well, if you pick him up, you better be gambling. You better be a team that's like, you know, you have to do a risky gamble. Like, I'm amazed when top orgs or orgs with money are the ones buying these players. It just boggles my mind.
But I mean, just to pull this back to what we were talking about at the start, nobody remembers who comes third. Like maybe for Evil Geniuses, they're like, we don't care about going to Worlds, right? Worlds doesn't matter. We want to take the big gamble that either we're going to come 8th or we're going to like win, right? Maybe to Evil Geniuses, that is the gamble that they want to take, and going to Worlds is not enough, right? In which case, respect. You know, we people may laugh at you for this in 5 years, but you know, you took the gamble because and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I can kind of understand. It's surprising. Both of those two things you mentioned to me are really, really surprising because I didn't think Horton was that bad either. But in fairness, I didn't watch NA Academy. So maybe Zion's button was like...
I watched NA Academy previously. I mean, Zion was like good in NA Academy, but like in the season that I watched, but it didn't look like he was suddenly just going to be like, oh, he's just on LCS form again. So, I mean, obviously there must be something that has to do with like a level of just like what he brings to team communication.
I would guess some bullshit like he's shot calling or something. Yeah, or something along those lines. You know, they thought he led all the rookies and maybe Hortons just doesn't talk as much or some bullshit like that. It's usually some extra, which to be fair, you can't know if you're not the coach. So,
I mean, we'll see this weekend. We'll see if either of these things we actually see on stage. It'd be really interesting if this was the case that we get to see, you know, Zion on stage, Huni and definitely on stage.
And by the way, just to cycle back, if anyone is listening and you are a player who has talent in NA, consider what Peter said earlier. Try and get a job on an ERL team. Like sure, come to Europe, do a boot camp, just pick a country you think's cool, like Netherlands or Germany or something. I mean, I maybe wouldn't go to Germany personally, but idiots from America are going to think it's cool in the same way as every fucking idiot European think going to America is awesome and going to Disneyland. Like, you realise that's a fucking simulacrum of a culture that you saw through a TV screen once, idiot. It's not real. But anyway, put that to one side. Come to Europe, just pick a country. You know, even worst case scenario, if you don't get picked up, you just have a little 1 month vacation, backpack around. But during that time, play solo queue, make it known to as many people as you can. Don't be toxic to people that you want to play in an ERL team. If one can pick you up and get a chance, by the way, the fact that you're American will give you novelty. That will make some of these teams think, I'll give him a chance. Might give us a little pop, might give us an interest in for American viewers. When you get your chance, you've got a way better chance of making it there. Like, if you even just get into the EU Masters tournament, you will already be seen by 10 times more eyes than in Academy in NA. For real.
And you'll show that you have mental resilience, right? Because I guarantee you that people, EU players at EU Masters will be there. Yeah. Really be. But if you
want to show you up,
yeah. And if they want to, and if you can show that you can handle that, unless
you win their respect.
Yeah, and unless LCS orgs are incompetent, they will spot that and they will say, "This guy should be my NA mid starter." Right? That's how you prove yourself. But you have to take a risk to be able to do that. So,
by the way, as an aside, here's another move you could do. I'm amazed no one's thought to do this. Is instead of having an academy team, bear in mind the only problem in the past with sister teams is we can compete in the same league in some sense. Why can't an NA org who's in LCS have an ERL team in Europe and then either look for the next European talents or send 2 of their NA players over every time to test them out there?
It's a different league. It's a different jurisdiction. So Riot EU.
No, but my point is, I think they should be allowed to. Like, in what way would it be in conflict of interest for me to own Team Liquid and have a Spanish ERL team? How would that ever conflict?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't concern me too much about North America, but imagine like a Chinese a Chinese team who, they can afford to have 20 players, 20 academy players, and they just.
No, I mean to have one team though in this sense, not to have as many as you want.
Oh, okay, I understand.
I mean, as a way you could take your academy player from NA and test him in Europe. You could have you can get the next perks before he becomes perks through your European org.
I mean, as the head coach for Europe,
you wouldn't want it to happen, but I think it should happen.
I don't really want NA Hawks having.
No, I understand why you're arguing against it, right? Yeah, sure, but I think Steve, I'd say, call me. We can make this happen.
Hey.
I don't want the next kha'zix coming. Yes,
fair enough.
Okay, yeah. But I mean, there are options out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it could be interesting. I definitely think that ERLs are definitely getting a bigger, they're just becoming more attractive to people to look into, because, I mean, LEC is just proving how valuable it is with all these new players, and eventually you have to start looking into where these players are coming from.
The big thing, though, I would say is, for players, I can kind of understand, right? Like players, if you're getting paid as much as I've heard, you can get paid to play in an NA academy and you don't really care that much, fine. I mean, there's no shame in wanting to have a career and wanting to be able to live life, right? But if you're a coach, I don't think that the coaches in NA get paid that much, do they? Definitely not academy coaches. I mean, academy coach?
I'm not sure. I know that so from what I've heard, most people that are in ERLs, I'm not sure if this is most, but I've heard that salary for ERLs is $2K a month or something, average. It's not very high. Whereas in NA, it's literally 3 or 4 times that. Average is 60K in NA. So it's, which to me is probably it's probably similar to what players on Vitality are making or something like that. So I don't know. I guess that's just why people aren't doing it. I mean, it's just the huge culture shock. And then the other thing is the way that I think the NA teams kind of mislead the players. They give them this whole spiel about, hey, if you play for our team, there's a chance
you get a chance in the LCS team.
Yeah,
right?
you'll be able to. Yeah, you'll be able to potentially get games on stage, and you have these players that have been promised games on stage for years, and it's you haven't seen them once. So it's
mate, all that needs to be said is this: Tactical was TSM's AD carry, and he couldn't get a spot over Sven when Sven was slumping, but then he got a slot in Team Liquid. Mm-hmm. What the fuck is that? What sort of message do you send to your academy team when that's the case? What you're basically saying there is Sven would pretty much have to kill half the team before we'd ever let you play, mate. Why the fuck am I bothering? And I would just say, by the way, on that whole angle, I get it that young people, it's going to be hard to convince them not to take the short-term offer over the long-term offer, because their life is so short that even 6 months is a long time to them. That's they're going through rapid generational changes every year or so because they're growing as a person. But I would just say this, as someone who has done it in my own career, every step of the way for the last 10 years, first 10 years, I used to do what everyone did. I went for the biggest job I could get that paid the most to do one job, and that covered everything. The last 10 years, the reason I succeeded in ways other people haven't is I always bet on myself. If there's a choice between make more but do something that I don't really want to do entirely, but some of it's all right and it's a good job for a good, I'll always say I'll take less, have more agency, and I'll bet on myself to be in a better position 2 years from now. And it's worked many, many times. So if you're a pro player, it doesn't matter that they might pay you 6K now. Take the 2K if it means you're betting on yourself, because you know how much you're going to play and try to be a better player in 1 year, but now be in a position on an ERL team or some other squad that could actually get you straight into the LEC. Forget being just the best academy player. That's going to do nothing for you.
Or play in Turkey, play in an emerging region as well.
Brazil, of all of these places. They're all places where you can prove yourself. And you can be a star as well, by the way. You go to a CB LOL and you become one of the best mid laners. You'll be a star. You'll have a massive social following. I mean, you'll get a lot of crap for that, but you'll have a massive social following.
Look at Shrimp. Shrimp played NALCS, and he was pretty much a nobody in NALCS. He was sitting 4 or 5K followers. Goes to he won a split with, I think, Flamenco, I believe. Yeah. So he won a split with Flamenco, and suddenly he's sitting 60, 70K followers. He gets insane interaction on everything, and people love him. So there's definitely
Dude as well.
Yeah.
Dude is
the support player that's French. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. On Pain. It's interesting because there's one player who's doing that right now, who's a guy called Rainbow, who was he played at Worlds. I can't remember which team it was. It wasn't for J Team. It was for one of the other two. LMS teams, but he was playing in Worlds.
Maybe was that the team?
No,
Could have been that.
Okay, but anyway, I remember. But
there's an LMS squad, right?
Yeah, but LMS isn't in obviously isn't a league anymore, and he chose to go to Brazil instead of playing in PCS, and now his team is top of the league. They won their first game. I can't remember if they won the second game, but he went into the second division in Brazil, dragged the team up from the second division, and now they're like one of the top teams in the first division, like just one split back to back. And it's obvious how good this guy is. And now people will pay attention. So.
Yeah. I mean, Brazil is a massive fan base. I mean, I was tweeting about it recently. Just the numbers. I mean, obviously there was like drops enabled and things like that.
Sure.
But there was 250,000 people watching CBLOL on Twitch recently.
The problem with Brazil is. So when Ryan
just changed, by the way, he apparently played for AHQ, mate. He now plays for Santos Esports.
Yeah. He plays for Santos now.
He's a Korean guy.
Yeah. I couldn't remember from the life of me what team it was. But I mean, he was good. He wasn't as good as Fofo, who was the JT mid laner, but he was probably the second best mid laner in LMS. Okay, but anyway, just going and talking about Brazil. So the problem is that I have with this with Brazil right now though is. Imagine if you're a Brazilian team, okay, and you want to go to Worlds right now. There is a 1 in 6 chance you cannot possibly go to Worlds. You cannot possibly play in the main stage of Worlds if you're an emerging region team. Because right now, the number 3 team from NA. Well, let's talk about 2019. Okay, so LMS. Okay, so you have the number 4 team from LMS, number 4 team from. number 3 team from NA, number 3 team from EU, and it was at the time number 3 team from China. And probably the best emerging region team in 2018 was Lion Gaming from Latin America North with Saya and Odie. I think Odie played. Did Odie play in NA?
No, he plays NA solo queue, but he played.
Okay,
Latin America.
But I remember that their group. They got an insanely hard. I'm just quickly checking.
I believe they had to play against Clutch.
No, from 2018. So 2018 was 2018. I think that they ended up playing. Sorry, it was Infinity in 2018. So they were a really strong team. They had to play Edward Gaming in their group, who got very far at Worlds, and then in the final play-in, they had to go and play G2. So sometimes you don't have the luck of the draw, and I think this is a problem with the world system right now, right? So there's like if you get number 3 team from EU and number 3 team from China, it's bad luck.
It's basically impossible. Yeah, sure.
But we'll see how they're going to change the world system. But I hope in the future they change the world system to allow teams, because you mentioned there's 255,000 people watching on Twitch Brazilian League of Legends, and maybe if just having 255,000 people watching your league maybe you should be allowed to send 2 teams to Worlds. Just like if all these emerging region teams could send 2, but that's just a side. I'm not sure why.
Or you could have a different tournament format that enabled a lower bracket so that this team that you could seed more teams into group stage, and if the team is bad, then they will be eliminated. So you have something like 3 teams from each group making it out into a bracket stage, etc. So it's not like super skewed against you. You do the Dota 2 format where the 9th through 12th place team are seeded into the bottom of the lower bracket, and then the top 8 teams are in a winner's bracket. And then
I'll give you another classic example where that would have potentially yielded a different result. Same tournament, Season 8 Worlds, right? Everyone forgets, right? You all ride that Cloud9 hype train. I always knew they were good. They almost lost to Gambit in the best of 5. So what I want to know is, would that Gambit team, if they'd have gone to Worlds, actually had a fucking interesting result? They took the team that 3-0'd a Freak of Freaks to 5 games. Like, I would like to see that team have another shot.
I mean, we almost lost the Unicorns of Love last year, so I mean, same sort of principle applies there.
Sure.
So it's just I wish there was a better system. Like, I'm not saying you should go back to season 6 or whatever where you had 2 teams. Although, INTZ managed to beat EDG back in the day, but maybe there needs to be a rethink for how that works.
Definitely.
So we just have to see. But yeah, prove yourself in Brazil. Prove yourself in Japan.
ERLs.
Prove yourself in ERLs. Yeah, there are options. Like, just because somebody is telling you that you cannot make it as a mid laner in North America doesn't mean that you have no other options. And there are people who are out there looking at the talent. Like, if I can be bothered to watch second division Brazilian League of Legends, which I watch every week, I can I can watch NA solo queue if there's the incentive to go and do it, right? People are watching.
Yep, definitely makes sense. Well, we have just hit the 2-hour mark, which is normally where we end the show. But if there's any other topics, I think we covered everything. If there's any other topics you want to talk about, though, real quick, we normally extend it to the guests. So, Peter, if you have anything,
there is actually one topic I want to ask, which is, what do you think about the 10.13 mid lane minion changes and the timing for this? So, just for people that don't know, there's a proposal right now. So the date is the 9th of June 2020 right now. So when we're filming. So which the proposal says that they want to change the minion speed from minions in the mid lane. So just to give you an idea, minions hit in the middle of mid lane at 58 and 28 past every minute, and they hit in side lanes at 07 and 37 past every minute in the game. And they're proposing to change how these minion waves work. Okay, so I just want to provide to provide a context.
What we're hearing is that they're out now, and it's just this is what Chakra says, so I trust on this. But he says that they're going to try this only in preseason. We should definitely definitely talk about it anyway, because I think it's an interesting topic. But just wanted to throw that out.
So that relieves me to hear, because basically, so I don't know how public this is, but I assume this isn't secret. But at the end of every split, Riot send teams a 10-page questionnaire, which you have the option to answer or you don't answer. I know some teams really like to answer. I know some teams don't. Every single split that they write, I write an 8-page, 8 A4-page essay on all the questions that they've done and explaining what they did right and what they did wrong. But there's a lot of but this is something which I know that definitely something that we push for testing, and definitely something other teams push for testing, because, and the reason why it's relevant is because Riot buffed the importance of scuttle crabs. My sense of time is wrong. Is long. Was it 3 years ago?
I think it was mid-season 8.
I think it was for season 8. Yes.
Yeah, season 8.
Yeah, so it's about 2 years now.
Yeah, which made, mid jungle has always, the thing about Pro League of Legends is mid jungle is a duo lane. Like, people don't think it's a duo lane; they just think about junglers doing one thing, and they think mid laners are another thing. Do you agree with us, actually, Dom? Am I?
No, it's a duo lane. It's a duo lane for sure.
Okay. But it's
sometimes a trio lane, actually.
sometimes a trio lane. But you can never talk about a jungler in isolation without talking about the mid laner. A topic that we can talk for 3 hours for. So I'm just
because you weren't you trying to meme on me earlier about Froggen? Swear I didn't hear you say anything about these junglers, Peter. What's going on here, homie? What's your own standards? Well,
this is the thing I will from me. I will say this about Froggen. If every jungler you play with can't figure out how to play with you, then at some point you have to take some degree of the blame, where it's like, you must play in a way that is just
name the top 2 junglers who played with him, Dom.
Top 2 junglers that play all time, or are we talking about?
Yeah, just name the top 2.
Top 2 junglers of all time. Well, I'd say Acadian. Like, Acadian has to be one of the...
Okay, there we go. Right. What's his starting spot at the moment? Oh, it doesn't have one, right? What's number 2? Go on to number 2.
He might have a starting spot with Dick.
Doesn't at the moment, though. Number two, come on.
And then I guess number 2, you'd have to say, like, Shook in the early days.
Oh, I was completely washed out the pro scene and came back for H2K for a split. So, I think you've answered your own question. Basically, it's the other way around. You're arguing these are all sick junglers, or some of them are sick junglers. And actually, it's Froggen who was the shitter. So, I'm just saying, your case sort of fell apart when we went into the discovery process.
No. I think that Acadian is actually, like, I think Acadian, even last split, I thought he was like top 4, top 5.
He's a good player. He's certainly not some superstar jungler, though. I'll tell you that.
Of course. But also, it's just like, when you're taking the jobs that Froggen is taking, you're not going to be getting superstar junglers.
Yeah, of course. I know that, mate. I've said that myself 50 times.
Of course. But I'm just saying in general, like, I think that Acadian is functional. When you saw Acadian play with Bjergsen, the team was making finals. So it's not like he's, like, washed out of his mind or, like, some crazy bad player. And I'm talking about this iteration of Acadian, not season 7 Acadian. And That being said, season 7 Acadian, when he first played with Froggen, his like first half of that split he was god. He was like,
they were the only two good players in the team. Let's be real.
Yeah, for sure. He was the best jungler in the league for like the first half of the split for sure. But anyways,
but I mean. It is interesting as well because like Niski was a player that has gotten a lot of credit this year, but like every single jungler Niski has played with has been like MVP or like first team, right? And people are like, oh, Niski's so lucky that he gets to play with all of these junglers, right? Mm-hmm. He's the luckiest mid laner in the world. He gets to play with all of these first team junglers, and they never make the connection. Yeah. So I mean, okay, but anyway, mid jungle 2v2 lane. Why is it a 2v2 lane? It's always been a 2v2 lane because of how pressure works on the map and because of how minion wave cycles in mid lane work differently from minion wave cycles in side lane. Again, don't want to.
Also, just proximity of the camps towards the lane. There's 4 of your camps that are towards the center of the map, which you can easily get off to assist mid lane in a situation. Also, the 2 side objectives, etc., are pretty close proximity to mid lane, etc. But but I understand.
But when they buffed Scuttle Crab, right? This made it a mid jungle meta, right? Because mid laner generally has more wave clear, generally can push his lane first, and if you want to contest Scuttle, he can rotate to you first to go and contest Scuttle. Okay. And if what they're proposing is going through, it's going to shake up a lot of things, right? But it's good. So I hadn't read the Shakira's tweet. I just heard that this is something that they were planning for 10.13. But this is a change that Riot are deliberately doing for competitive, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it's going to hurt your Aurelion Soul mains or your Talon mains or something in solo queue, right? Yep. But they
don't deserve anything anyway. So.
I mean, one of
they
those
don't deserve human rights. Like they're Talon and Aurelion Soul players. Like
humans, so right?
I mean, one of those Aurelion Soul players escaped solo queue and plays in LPL. Teach him out, my Aurelion Soul one trick, but you know it's going to hurt them. But the interesting thing to me was the timing of when they chose to make the announcement. And if they decided not to do this, and this is something they're going to do in preseason, that's something that I'm really, really happy to hear, because the last time something like this was done was in season 8 with Ardent season 7, sorry, with Ardent Sensor, right? And this was a change that was made between regular season and playoffs, right? And it basically shifted everything in a way that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. And when I saw that they were planning these things, these changes, as a coach, as a pro coach, it immediately rang alarm bells for me. But if you say it's not happening, then I don't think
it is happening. I actually got the tweet. Chakra has linked me the tweet from Mark Yetter, but it says the feedback on mid lane changes has been extremely useful. Thank you all. Our updated plan is to move forward. Is to move these to after Worlds patch. More info in the thread. So yeah, pretty much they're just gonna do it preseason season 11.
But okay, so let's just talk about it in theory then. So the really interesting thing about what this can do is it can create a lot of different. So I assume they want all the lanes to hit at the same time. Is my understanding. It's going to change how side lanes play out in the early game. So when Riot 2 seasons ago, Riot changed the way the minions interact in the side lanes. Now minion waves don't slow stack anymore. They kind of just freeze in the same place on each side of the map. If you leave a side lane by itself. But these kind of changes in the early game can mean that you see a lot more people roaming side into mid. And what that means is normally in the early game, jungling is either sync jungling, desync jungling, or vertical jungling, right? And now it's going to change it to be one side of the map is going to be strong side of the map, and one side of the map is going to be weak side of the map in the early game, in a way that you don't have right now. Because if you have a weak side of the map, you can use your mid priority, if you have mid priority, to cancel your weak side or to play hard into your strong side, right? So these changes have the potential to be really, really interesting because. But maybe something which affects the impact of junglers as a whole, because now they're going to have to be able to play with their supports and their top laners. But I was just wondering what your thoughts on the changes were, because
I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that you're going to see like different like starts, especially when it comes to this. Like when I think of like these changes, I'm like, oh, so that makes instantly like Wraith and Wolf start significantly better. And like a lot of people were starting Wolves in pro play leashless. now, but I think this will actually increase the clear times of junglers because now people like the mid laner is going to have nothing to do, so you're going to be getting like leash on wraiths, leash on wolves, etc. And I think that will just change the way that side lanes interact because side lanes aren't going to be forced to leash anymore, or like I know there's a lot of matchups where people can't leash, so I think that this might change into like being able to play like two power lanes and have that more viable, for example. So like I think that like maybe like if you go with something like a Kalista top, but then you also have a bot lane that is a pressure bot lane, I think that like those types of strategies like instantly become more viable with this type of change.
Does it imply that you would do more like mid invades?
I'm not sure if you do more mid invade. I think that you do more like support invades like to mid. It's like kind of how I see it. So like support and jungle invade through mid lane together. I feel like now instead of, because right now like I think one of the best ways to control towards like a strong side, right, is like you push mid lane and then you have your mid laner and like jungler create pockets of vision and then they roam towards that, and that pocket of vision is towards their strong side, and then they roam the mid laner and the jungler towards the strong side consistently. So like I think,
or you could choose to defend, or you can choose to defend your weak side as well. Yeah. So you can set the vision on your strong side and then either dive the guy or defend the dive on your weak side if you have mid priority.
Yeah. But so I think that just becomes like different because if I'm understanding it correctly, like mid is not going to have that like free window of time where like the side lane is still not crashed and they've already cleared their mid lane wave. Like they're going to actually be stuck in the mid lane clearing that wave, which might actually just like create more agency for junglers in solo queue. Like I think that this is maybe becomes a jungle buff in solo queue.
Yeah, it's a massive buff to support. Massive buff to support jungle as well, which is going to be fascinating. But I'm just happy that they're willing to fiddle around with these kind of things, right? Because that can do a lot of things, right? Changing the speed of minions can change fundamentally how wave control works, can change fundamentally how lots of things work. And I felt that maybe like this is a risk to take, right? And it's a risk I would hate to see right now in the season, but it's super interesting to me to even just think about, because it may mean you can think about what other kind of changes can they make next.
Well, I'm happy that they're doing this to lane and not to jungle, because it seems like every season they center most of their changes around the jungle itself. So this season they did this massive reduction in experience that ended up being a failure, and they ended up pumping more experience back into the jungle because of just how bad it was to play the role. And I think that these mid lane changes could be interesting. What I'm hoping doesn't happen is that we just end up with like super boring control mage meta mid, which I could see potentially happening, where we just
hit those
like a Azir, Corki, Orianna for the rest of our lives, like mid lane. Like I'm hoping that doesn't become the case, because I feel like I mean, it's just like a nerf to Doinby in that case, right? Like,
it really sucks for FPX, but I mean, this season's been an odd one for jungle, because like a lot of do you remember when they buff like jungle clearing for so they call them off meta junglers? So things like Zed and Na and Garen. And what that meant is that your team split pushers started taking your Cromp and Krugs much earlier on into the game than they would otherwise be doing. So this season's been an odd season for jungle, but I mean that is really fascinating, because we could finally see a meta where top jungle is a defining role of importance for map control.
I guess it does actually just increase the value of your top laners like drastically with the mid lane changes, because I mean, obviously mid and top are going to be the strongest in terms of experience. They're going to be the most ahead champions in the game, and then now having like the mid lane more locked in, I think it could just do something crazy for like being able to like play through top, and like you might just have that might just be the end of Kumo's job right there for Dooney. Like,
I mean, all I say is that mid jungle bot lane have had to handle the 4v2 dives that come at like 4 minutes or like 8 minutes, and now it's revenge. Bot lane coming, diving mid lane, 4v1. Yep. All of those times that your mid laner has roamed and tried to kill you in the side lane as an AD carry, now you can get your payback. Stack your wave, go mid, dive the mid laner.
Just remember, every time they dived you a few times in the game and it was impossible to do anything, just type to the mid laner, just play bro. Why are you behind bro? Just type that to him over and over again, like he's like every fucking mid laner's done to all the fucking openers for the last 3 years.
Well, to be fair, like I feel like when I play solo queue, most bot laners like know the dive is coming, dying, but they kind of, it's like their little way of like having a protest is staying on that turret and like letting themselves die. They're like, look at what happened because you didn't control your mid laner. Like, we're now dead because of you. Where they could just like back off, sacrifice a wave, you know, like allow their mid laner to like restabilize the lane and then walk back to the turret. Like, they could sacrifice, but they choose to like to int in order to protest their mid laner, like their mid laner is doing.
Remember, the phrase is just play safe, bro. Just play safe, bro. Just keep saying that.
I mean, from my experience, mid laners tend to be some of the most arrogant League of Legends players there are. So it will be
especially
very fun to watch
in EU, especially in EU.
Of course.
But
the reckoning is coming. But yeah, but that's all. That was just.
So that's what's on. And then I thought about the second topic, which you mentioned on Twitter. Like while we're going, I was like, might as well close on this one. Okay. So this topic is obviously J Team versus TL at Worlds in 2019. I believe you made a tweet or something like that where you said that J Team is potentially even better than TL.
So it was Splice said that they wanted to be in Group D. Like said that they would prefer to be in Group D instead of Group B. And then Loco went on a show with Uthorin where he said that he hadn't watched a single game of Splice, but he was going to predict Gigabyte Marines were going to be higher.
Yes.
So there's outside information and there's inside information. Okay, and to be clear, I made a mistake at this World Championships because I didn't have Twitter when I was in China and I didn't use it when I was in Brazil. So this was my first time that I was using social media at going to World Championships. But the thing that people didn't see behind the scenes was that the meta is going to be mid jungle, right? It's a mid jungle meta, pushing and roaming to the sides, right? FPX did not get better as Worlds progressed. People say, oh, FPX were rubbish in group stage, and they improved as the tournament progressed. No. Like, what happened in groups is that J-Team and Splice fought them to the death 2v2 mid. They were not going to, like, let you get 2v2 mid priority. They were just going to pick for priority, and they would stop you from being able to roam. And FPX, as they went through the tournament, they played stronger teams, and those stronger teams became a bit more arrogant and were like, "Oh yeah, we know FPX play mid jungle. We're just good enough, and we'll just do better." And it didn't work for G2. I mean, G2 just gave them mid jungle prior every single game in the series, and that's why they lost. It's not that. Yeah, I mean, it's not that FPX magically got better. They played the same style that they played for the entire year, but teams that were maybe less. I don't want to call it less self-confident, but less arrogant, I would say. You know, just said, we've got to stop this happening, and then we'll work out a way to win later. Okay, so we knew that behind the scenes, but we couldn't say anything about this, right? So, and when you go and talk about Team Liquid, we talked a little bit about Jensen in the past, right? Jensen, fantastic, 1v1 mid laner, but is somebody who in a mid jungle too, like Jensen when he was at his best on Cloud9 had Smoothie roaming into mid and contracts camping for him, right? And then they just played to get him fed, and then he would carry the entire game with a weak side AD carry and various top laners, right? And going into Worlds, the problem that I had going into this is that a lot of people hadn't watched J-Team. But I mean, nobody's going to go on Twitter and go and say, "Oh, I watched J-Team," right? But maybe they watched like maybe they watched the finals of LMS, but they definitely you don't learn from watching J-Team winning the finals of LMS, right? Because you look at it, because when you play teams in your region, teams are changing their play style in order to combat
the game within the game. Yes, exactly.
Which is why FPX versus IG looks so awful from the outside in the semifinals of the world. It's because FPX are doing rotations that literally would not work against any other team except IG, but they scouted IG, they played against IG, they didn't know how IG play. So you know, the way that you learn how a team plays, or the way that you study how if a team is good, you don't care about SKT versus Dragon X. You care about SKT versus like a mid-table, like Hanwha Life, right? You care how do SKT play the game against Hanwha Life, right? In LMS, this would be the equivalent to how do J-Team play against Matchy or somebody like this, like so a mid-table team in LMS. And J-Team and all LMS teams, Flash Wolves the same, right? Were a typical mid-jungle, you know, cast a Maple, they're going to push you in and they're going to go and dive your bot lane. And this was the meta for Worlds, and this made J-Team extremely scary at Worlds, right? But the problem is that when somebody goes on Twitter and people, the way that people tend to respond, it's almost sort of like canceling an opinion. It's like, oh, the only reason you're saying this is to shit on NA teams, right? Like
cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
Or people will, like, the worst kind of people are the people who say, oh, I watch tons of LMS and I know that J-Team don't do this. And for somebody who watches all of the games of J-Team in LMS, like I can tell how many games you've watched, right? If you're trying to have that kind of a discussion with me, if you've only watched the final of LMS, I know that you think certain things about certain players because that's all you've watched. If you watch all the playoffs, then something like this. But if you've watched the entire season, then people can tell. And the people who were being the loudest critics of this were the people who didn't watch any LMS at all and just assumed LMS was a completely rubbish region without considering J-Team in that context. Or there were teams that say, the thing which frustrates me the most is when somebody doesn't say, you're a bad analyst. They go and say, you're only saying this because of X, because you're biased, right? Like, it's much better if somebody goes and says, your opinion is wrong. Yeah, you're wrong, rather than saying, you're only saying this because you hate NA or something like this. And this was, when Duke made those statements, it wasn't that we were saying Team Liquid were bad. It's that we were saying
stylistically how it would match up.
Yeah, like this meta is a mid-jungle meta, and in a mid-jungle meta, J-Team are an insane team and like should be respected as an insane team, right?
Something to say on that. That's another mistake people always make in League of Legends is assuming that the region or the team you play for is your level as a player. I can tell you right now, I don't care who gets mad at this statement because you don't know these leagues if you get mad at it. 4-4 is a better mid laner than Doinby. 4-4 is a fucking mechanically skilled player. There's a reason he's now in the LPL, by the way. This is a guy where he was the star of the LMS for like 3 years. Like, just because J-Team and LMS are nowhere near LPL and FPX doesn't mean 4-4 individually could not be better than Doinby. Yep. Absolutely he could be.
But if you watched Team Liquid play at Worlds, you could see this happening, right? Like the games where Team Liquid could neutralize mid, or the enemy mid laner couldn't punish Jensen 1v1, or they couldn't punish 2v2 properly, Team Liquid won. Their bot lane was insane. Okay, tempo down. Their bot lane was good. Okay, I'm not going to go and say they were RNG level, but they were a good bot lane, and they could win the game through bot when there wasn't 4 people in their lane at 6 minutes, right? But when TL couldn't get this, they just lost, right? And this is why this entire topic, to pull it back to the Broxah Xerxes thing that I talked about, you can see that Team Liquid recognized that this was an issue, because otherwise they would have probably been picking up Xerxes instead of picking up Broxah, right? And it's just like that entire thing left a really bad taste in my mouth, because the majority of the criticism, I mean, nobody criticized based on what LMS on the LMS they'd seen. They either said, "Oh, I didn't watch any games, so I've decided that I don't like Splice. Splice are garbage," or they go and say, "This is
you're just an EU person hating on NA.
You're just an EU person hating on NA." And this kind of shutting down discourse is a big problem. So
I mean, I think the thing that I would say that I would push back on is the fact that like FPX didn't get better as the tournament progressed, because like just from watching them, like there were certain players, like specifically LWX, I thought had a horrendous group stage. I mean, do you remember like the first game that he played where he just like, it was the Kai'Sa Galio game where he literally just Kai'Sa ulted and inted like 10 times in a row. It was basically a meme. So I guess like that's like from my perspective, like what I would push back on is like it did to me look like FPX was like, I don't know if LWX was nervous on stage or whatever it is, but there was like a lack of cleanliness in their gameplay.
The thing is, though, I know what he means. Like, for example, like the better distinction is they didn't get better from the semis to the final. Because I agree, the semis they had against IG just looked like two teams who don't even know how to play the game. Like, they're just constant fighting in the stupid snap. But the point is, if you know that those two teams come from the same region, have played each other even in playoffs before, and have probably scrimmed all worlds long together, I've no doubt the game that they're thinking they're playing and where the opportunities are going to be so different to how they would play. Like, the team, put it this way, the FPX that beat IG there, I would have bet my life wouldn't beat G2. I would be like, G2 will murk these guys. Like, they're going to play right in their hands, but they didn't play at all like that when they played G2 in the finals. So I get Peter's premise of like the extra conditions you have to think about in the matchup that aren't universally going to apply to everyone.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I can see the LWX point. I mean, you're right about LWX. He looked like he never played against Veigar when we played against him on stage. But
it's like ulting like into Veigar cage and stuff. It was like, I mean, man, like, do you think you go through it, or like what is happening?
But I would say that the other 4 players were pretty constant for the entire tournament. So yeah, I mean, It's just interesting. But
yeah, I think it also just like their drafts ended up being different. Like as the tournament progressed, like specifically like obviously the Nautilus pick was super famous towards the end, where they were playing a lot of Nautilus mid. Where like the initial picks, I think were like I remember a Scion mid game that they played that was kind of weird. Overall, like it just seemed strange to me. I felt like maybe like their drafts they became more comfortable in, like their priority on Rise went up. They like kind of defaulted back into being like, hey, we're like a Rise, Renekton, and like Nautilus mid team, that type of stuff.
But I mean, if you're willing to, if you want to have a discussion with somebody like about these kind of things, try to have it in good faith, right? Like,
sure.
Right, contest the individual points. Don't automatically assume bias. Don't automatically assume incompetence. Don't automatically. I mean,
You know what you said,
I mean, this is what I deal with every day. I wish that we could do this, man.
A very famous criticism, which you give, but you give it in a legit sense, is never go into the conversation and because the other person has a different opinion, say, well, you obviously don't watch their games. Like, if you talk to them and it's obvious, like for example, if I talk to someone back in 2015 and they're still telling me Uzi Eyes are God in every single LPL game, I know they don't watch the LPL. At that point, I can now make a factual statement. But if they just had a different opinion, they think Clearlove's the best jungler, they might just have a different perspective on LPL to me. I wouldn't start and say we obviously don't watch LPL. Like that does just shut down any possible discourse at that point in time.
Yeah. Actually, I just want to make one final statement because slightly since Uzi has retired less than a week ago from this video. I think I'm actually going to go the other way with Uzi and say that I think he's underrated. Like,
I don't know how that'd be possible, but all right.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say we were at Worlds in 2016 and we scrimmed I was at Worlds with INTZ. And we scrimmed against RNG and we played some cheese like Sivir Trundle bot lane and we cheesed them with it and we were able to get a win. But so they scrimmed us again, and at the end of 2 games into that series, Uzi was Ezreal and he was like, we killed all of his teammates and he was 1v4 in a team fight as Ezreal and he dodged 8 skill shots without using his flash, killed all of our team 1v4, and after that we had to have a meeting as a team to say, are we going to stop playing skill shot champions against this team because we literally cannot hit a skill shot against this guy. It's impossible to hit a skill shot against this guy, and we had to change all of our preparation to talk about how we can get better practice from scrims against this team, and I've never had to do that for another player before. Like a guy who would just sit there, spit in your face, dare you to go and do something, and there's nothing that you could do. And because he performed, he had some suboptimal games on stage, and his time at OMG was not that good and things like this. There's always an asterisk of is this guy like as good as people say he was. He's compared to people like Name, Deft, and people like that, people who scaled in laning phase and were really, really good team fighters. Whereas I think that this guy, that there's no question, if there is a Hall of Fame, he's a first year person with Faker. I mean, like, those are the only 2 people who I think are 100% in. But I just bring that. I just mention that because I've never had to, like, in 9 years coaching, I've never had to take a break in the middle of a scrim to go and ask my team if we want to go and stop playing skill shot champion. I mean, that's how good the guy was. He was insane. So.
Yeah. You consider him by far the best AD carry to ever play the game?
I think he's by far the best.
I mean, he basically just said he's the next best player after Faker.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I just wanted to put the context around it.
Jackie Love one day, maybe.
Yeah,
but
because
nobody else.
Because those are the other people that, like, when we have a conversation about AD carries, there's people that are going to say Prey even. There's people that are going to say Def. There's people that are going to say Jackie Love. There's people that are going to even say Ruler, maybe. Yeah. Wei Zhao, if you're
had 3 years.
If you're as old as Thorin, man, maybe you say Wei Zhao, but most of the kids that play this game.
I'm almost as old as Thorin.
I'm gonna be as old as Thorin soon.
I'll just expose everyone watching this stream for what a ridiculous double standard you all apply to me. Go on then. Anyone in this conversation, call or chat, tell me Bjergsen's world class, because guess what? That's actually closer to Wei Zhao and Froggen than it is to the fucking modern day, you clowns. Here's the difference. Because you all started in season 5, your version of being a boomer is only 2 years after mine, you idiots. You all think that you're talking about 10 years ago. You're talking about 8 years ago. Shut the fuck up.
Weixiao's locked in for Hall of Fame, but probably not.
He shouldn't be first ballot.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's obviously, yeah, but.
It was all in humor anyway. Whatever.
I think the craziest thing about Wei Zhao is like how good he became. Like, he elevated from just being like a whatever player to a god. Because like when you look at that team, everyone cared about like only Messiah for the beginning. No one thought anything about Wei Zhao. And I played a lot against Wei Zhao because they actually played in an OGN tournament that I participated in, and they were one of our main scrim partners. And it was crazy seeing this guy go from like, oh, this is Messiah's team, this is a TF team, to being like, this guy is the Ezreal and Vayne god of the world. He is the best AD carry to ever play the game. Like, it was such a quick turnaround where he just elevated to like.
I mean, in season 4, he almost took that. He almost took that world. Yeah, I mean, and that team was.
Yep, they were garbage.
I'm not gonna. Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Yep.
That's.
But I guess this is definitely the longest episode we've ever had. We had a bunch of good topics. We talked solo queue.
Yeah, you're talking to the Splice guy. He skilled into the late game in the fucking competition.
That's actually a good point. If we invite more Splice players on, maybe we can get like a 5-hour episode and get Xerxes on. Do nothing in the early game, so we'll be good on that. But yeah, no, I thought it was a good episode. Covered a bunch of different topics. I definitely appreciate you coming on, talking about just like how to I think one of the most impactful discussions, at least for me, was just like how the 2-year plan and how to like formulate a championship team, attack a team like G2 and their reign in Europe. Talked about solo queue. Talked about olden days, great players, everything pretty much on this show. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good one. Thank you for being here, obviously, Peter.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next week on the Crackdown. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.
See you. Thanks for having me.
Peace.